employees and their, and I've already looked at everyone's resume. I mean,
They're comfortable with speaking, and yeah, right. Yeah.
Jan,
I don't know.
You win that? You just put
I heard butterscotch. Bizarre.
Oh. My brain is not here at the moment.
I'm not checking.
Yeah, Artie?
Hey,
Oh, yeah.
might have taken the last one. I don't think there's anything I can wait for you. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it.
He was looking for you. For his
Holding it
what?
hostage. Right? But thanks.
Hi.
I said to Janie, this is the only Valentine I got. I was like,
Oh, I guess
I know. I was like, oh,
we didn't do them either. We played pickleball for
Valentine's Day.
thank you. And happy birthday to Melissa. Thank you.
That's the smartest.
She was celebrating on Facebook.
She's always celebrating. That girl is wide open. Even Nick. Good evening. We'll come and set them up. I saw them a while ago.
Who did you see? Oh, well,
Not too bad. Kids are there, so I went for a while.
Oh. Better take a break for a second.
Good deep breath.
this looks.
Like you're cleaning agent.
That's a mess.
What's that?
Stuff up here. Middle school all day.
Oh, you are. Oh, God. Should we create some noise so you feel more comfortable?
Otis, my man. Good evening.
Oh,
Let's see.
Oh,
Like that, Janie?
that's. Yeah.
Earlier, we chatted.
Very good. He threatened to come back and he carried out his threat. I want you. Yeah, we will. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock, Thursday, February 15th. Hope everyone had a happy Valentine's Day. And thank you all for being here for our work session. The ambition this evening is to review and discuss our CIP and remind everyone as we work through this, our ambition is to affirm the things on the plan, and if there are any changes or modifications that we'd like to see, discuss those and give staff clear direction as we look to the future. And with that, I'll call on the city manager for to take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Want to first say thank you to Jennifer Bell and the rest of city staff going through this process to put together a very good, I believe, capital investment plan for the city. I always consider it exciting while challenging because this is the foundation for the really fantastic improvements that we're going to make, the way we're going to improve our city and the quality of life for our citizens. So I do find it exciting every year. So anyway, I want to start out with having Jennifer Bell explain to you where we will find the funding this year for the plan. And if you will spend a few minutes on that, then we'll just keep tag teaming different areas of the plan itself for your review and discussion.
Hi, good evening. So just to discuss an overview of the funding for the year, I am looking at the page behind tab 2 in the binders, and that's the FY25 plan. So what we are proposing is, well, first of all, let me back up. Previously with the State Street funds we receive for the roads in the city, we've always done those projects out of the general fund, even though they're rarely capital projects. So this year we're proposing to put $500,000 from the State Street funds into the CIP to do some of the paving work that we have proposed. Next, we're proposing $830,000 to be contributed by the general fund. You'll see we're proposing a large financing this year, and that encompasses the city hall renovations and also the high school gymnasium. We would just try to tag along with whatever Rockbridge County does for their funding, if the project proceeds in FY 25. And then lastly, at the end of FY 23, the Capital Projects Fund had a really healthy fund balance of just over 6.2 million. So we're proposing that the difference of 305,000 be made up from fund balance in the CIP. Any questions?
No questions? Very good.
I will note that we're pretty close to balancing the budget, Jen and myself, and we're always trying to scrape together a few more dollars. So we'd prefer to have a few more dollars in the contribution to the CIP from the general fund, but we feel this is adequate. And if we find more, we'll probably dump a few more dollars in that. But this is where we are today. So one thing I'd like to go through with you is the City Hall renovation. You can see the actual details of that on page 25-10, also in tab 2. I think you're all pretty familiar with the project. We had a pretty detailed work session on that particular project several months ago. Obviously, it's been something we've entertained in the CIP for a number of years, 3 years of funding, third and final year to get it to construction. And we do have obviously an upgraded.
Okay down there? Water bottle.
We do have an revised cost for this project, and it's obviously higher than any of us would have hoped for. And we'll try and control those costs as we move forward. As Jennifer Bell noted, this is one of the large items, the largest item in the CIP for the fiscal year 25. We will borrow money for that. The debt service will come out of general fund. And this is part of the CIP that you will either approve or not approve as you approve this document. Obviously, as a city manager and staff, we do hope that this remains on the CIP for FY 25. It's necessary on a number of levels. And so if you have questions, staff and I, Patrick Madigan from Public Works, Jennifer Bell, Finance, and I are here to answer any questions you have, but this is the significant item that is being proposed for funding completion in FY 25. So happy to entertain any questions, any concerns you might have.
This is based on the A option, the option 1 of
Yes.
okay.
Yes, just restoration of the current footprint of the building.
Thanks.
And that was rated at that time as fair, not good, not excellent, just fair.
Building?
Yes, as
Yes.
far as functionality, if we were to do this option 1, the less expensive, course of action. So again, it's just, if it's just fair, I just am clear that we're content with that.
We are content with it from a staff standpoint, absolutely. I don't have the report in front of me. I would say it's better than fair.
Okay.
Compared to what we have. It's a good, good project for the city, for our staff, and for the citizens of the community that will last for a number of decades, these improvements.
David, just to discern, it seems like and I'm working from recall. I don't have the report either, but when you use the word fair, this isn't going to be an opulent building.
No,
this
just
is
when
just
ACOM presented us the options, they got pretty deep into it, and
Right.
they rated the functionality of this option as fair. The other options were rated as good and excellent.
gotcha.
And those other options cost, $1.5 million more, or,
Several.
you could build a brand new building and that would be, $4 million more. That's not really in the cards. But as far as, renovating with an addition, that was going to be good. That was going to give space that was just needed based on our space study, I guess. It was going to meet what we said we needed for elections and so on. So I just clarifying. And if the addition was not going to include a council meeting space.
That's correct. It would not.
So we would still have this lease. It's not like but I just clarifying that.
Very good. Any other questions or observations with that? Timeline sounds all right. Cost is egregious. Nothing new with construction. Very good. What else, city manager?
Thank you. Jennifer is going to roll into the public works areas of the projects and improvements. And there are three different areas of that she will go through. And of course, again, Patrick Madigan is here, our public works director, for any detailed questions you have. So Jennifer, please.
So I'm still on that same page, which the number is 25-0. Looking at streets, parking and sidewalks, the downtown enhancement plan. Those are funds that are generally requested by Main Street Lexington throughout the year. For example, this year we purchased new ribbons for Christmas and we used money from that line item. Sidewalk repairs, we're not looking at anything extensive, just the regular run-of-the-mill repairs that we come across each year. Street resurfacing, this is where you're going to see that 500,000 I was talking about from State Street Maintenance Funds, and then an extra 150,000. McCrum's parking lot. Is that just resurfacing? Just resurfacing the parking lot. And Courthouse Square hardscape improvements. That's a project in conjunction with WNL and Main Street Lexington. And we spoke with Rebecca a couple of days ago, and she wasn't sure that they would actually be able to start it in FY25. And so we asked her if we could split our payments over 2 years, just to make it a little bit easier on the city.
Jen, on the downtown enhancement plan, and I think it used to be more, but it's 15,000, so it probably will get spent in 1 year. But if not, can Main Street work with you to carry it over to the next year if they want to do a bigger project that takes?
It's my understanding that previously when Noah was the city manager, that just happened each year.
Sure.
But then I think when Jim and I took over, we weren't aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we did work with Rebecca to see like what may be sitting there. And I don't know that we made the final determination on if they were going to have access to those funds. Do you recall?
I do not.
Okay, I'm
Is it-
sorry.
My recollection is they would have access to it, but only by request. So
Okay,
it wasn't that they could say, oh, well, we want to do $100,000 project
Right.
because we got $100,000 in our enhancement line. The 100,000 is there, but they need to get approval from staff to accomplish that.
Right. And is that continuing? Because I wasn't quite clear when I know y'all had a discussion, you and the city manager had a discussion, if that was going to continue forward, that there would be a fund for that, or if it was, we have that money that's available, but from now on it's spend it or lose it.
I'll go back and check my
Okay, that's
notes.
fine.
I'm sorry.
Fine, that's fine.
I should
wondering, 'cause
remember.
I know somebody's going to ask again, and yeah.
Mhm.
If I could interrupt, I believe going forward, we said, yes, we would go ahead and accrue that money.
Oh, okay.
Going backwards, those 2 or 3 years when we didn't have it there was another question. You know,
Okay.
it was,
Right, that's even better if that fund still will exist in the future. I like that.
So your question is somewhat is what's the balance of that fund?
I don't even care what the balance is, just if they don't spend it, does it get put into a fund or do they lose it? But
Gotcha.
it sounds like it gets put into a fund and they can build it up for a bigger project, which is great.
As far as the McCrum's parking lot resurfacing, how do you anticipate that we will navigate the privately owned hardscape of that parking lot?
we would contact the owners and see if they want to participate while we have the equipment there. And based on the cost of that particular space they own, they could put in that kind of money and we'd go ahead and schedule to have that paved as well. I mean, there's no downside to the city. Obviously, it would be very beneficial in some cases but it would be up to the owner to make that decision and pay that cost.
Okay, just to clarify, since a lot of folks don't realize that some of those parking spots are privately owned. And if we try to do and finally resurface the publicly owned portion of McCrum's, it might still reflect poorly on the city if it looks like, they couldn't afford to do the last X number of spots that border this property and those properties. And so I just hope that they will participate while the equipment's there. As far as the McCrum's lot, do we rent out any of the city-owned parking spots there?
Don't know the answer to that. No.
Okay, so we just lease parking spots at the firehouse lot and then at the police station and a few other places. Okay. So basically, my point is all the reserved spots there are not, that's, if people are wondering what is not city property, all of the spots that say reserved in the McCrum's lot are privately owned.
Yes, sir. They
Which
are.
could
correct.
be maybe what, 30 or 40 parking spots? Okay.
Mhm.
I would just pile on as we go through the process of engaging the neighbors substantially, because as some buildings are being renovated, if sewer lines need to be replaced, would hate to resurface the lot and then have it torn up 6 months later with utility work that could have been done. And I don't know if there's any value to it, but perhaps checking with Dominion to see if any of the building owners would like to put things underground. The spaghetti up there is pretty substantial. So it don't know if you don't ask, but and then of course the Maharises have the largest part of the privately owned from the southern end down to Jefferson.
And
So-
then I think maybe the Grand Building has a sliver that goes the whole way down behind the properties on Washington Street.
Correct.
That's yes. So
Thanks for reaching out to the neighbors.
Okay, so we have covered City Hall under municipal facilities. And then we're also just looking to do a few improvements at the city pool, fixing up the bathrooms and the kitchen. Moving down to central dispatch, I've shown just the city's portion of what these projects will cost and so the radio microwave network replacement, their system is currently obsolete and they had spare parts that they've been using, but are running low. So they need to replace that. Their furniture, it's used 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And after 10 years, it's in pretty rough shape. So they would like to go ahead and replace that. And then the tower battery replacement, they're going to start doing that every year, replacing 2 batteries just to make sure they're in good working order. Any questions on central dispatch? Under parks and cemeteries, we have just general playground upgrades, things that need to get done year after year. And then at Jordan's Point Park, we have a few more projects that we'd like to see completed. And Patrick, would you like to talk about those?
I think I placed a comms product in front of you there, just showing you there's when we had shown you the overall plan before, we had talked about the road and then also down by the river. And so we've got the road was part of the money that we had asked you for in 24. And so we have a balance of funds. We're about 2/3 into that money so far. We didn't get to the paving, but we'll get to that in the spring. And then, our intent would be to move forward with the road proposal there. And then in 25, the ask would be for the waterfront stadium seating concept that's in that plan. So that's basically the 2 major things. We would try to carve out a good portion to do most of the landscaping in-house, so we can kind of have that be government furnished. So we're just getting the contractors to do the substantive construction, basically the concrete, curvilinear kind of seating and what have you. Again, the only permits, so to speak, that we have with this, and it's more self-guided, is the erosion and sediment control. That's handled by Steve Polk in-house. He's as our water control authority or sediment control authority. So we have to be sure we have those plans. So we'll have to have AECom develop those for the contractors to follow to do that construction. Again, as I've shown you, the construction, as you can see, it's a little bit beyond our capability to do in-house. So that's the ask for 25. We tried gauging it with letting some local construction firms take a look, to try to at least gauge that cost that we're asking for the waterfront seating. So that's primarily what that will cover. But provided you're good with the concept and plans there, we can move forward with the road, potentially in the spring, summer, still utilizing the $24, and then move into the stadium seating waterfront area in 25.
If we move forward with these items, will there be, I think this is awesome that you gave this to us. If these will be available at City Hall so that we can we can broadcast that changes are affront at Jordan's Point Park. We're we're looking at things again, because we know we've been talking about it for years, but just to invite folks to City Hall to page through this and kind of lay their eyes on what we've been talking about. Because I remember back when we walked the property with you and staff, that was helpful for all of us. But these drawings are again helpful because it was pre-COVID that we engaged school children, the public, LPDA for the project that cost $74,999. That we got all of the public input on what projects could be done at Jordan's Point. And here we are in FY25. It's been 5-6 years later, and it's fun to get them done, but just the public is involved at some point, because they got us to this point. They just might not remember it. These are all their suggestions from 6 years ago.
Yeah. We do have extra hard copies here if you'd like to take some home and share them with people. No reason not to. They'll be at City Hall, but
I
we've got
think
some
if they're
tonight.
at City Hall, I think that'll be great. Even if we left one at the library, just to say you can look at it. But it's just that folks know that they can find this information, I think is really important.
We can also hang it on the website and make it part of the city manager's weekly report, and just have a link in there, and ask Janie to put it up on the website as well too. So this way folks can have digital access to it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir.
Exciting.
Yeah. So subject to any questions, that's where we're at. And if you get an opportunity to get down there, you'll see we've still continue to do some improvements. Last week, we finished up some of the guardrail improvements down there.
It's really good.
And so we've got a contractor lined up to do the paving. They turned the mill off before we could get there in November. So as soon as they fire up or they have something go, Adams has something going, Mr. Pave will be out there. And that also includes some patching and repairing throughout Providence Hill too. We were gonna capture that work as well too.
Patrick, on the proposed new road that goes along the mill race, I can't visualize, even though I'm looking at it. Is it going to materially change, or is the how severe is that turn? Will it be
Right there coming in.
Yeah.
They'll at least the radius that they had designed, it looked like it would be a general sweep. And so there'd be enough, wouldn't be sort of have to do a hard turn coming across the bridge. Yeah.
It appears that way, and no meaningful upgrades to the bridge or
No,
abutment.
not at this time.
Okay.
Although the bridge may lend itself to a slight pedestrian walkway, because there are some of the bents there. I don't know if we talked about it when we walked during council session down there, but there's a portion of the bridge that's still the the supports have an area that we could almost have something engineered or designed. Again, the only problem whenever you're doing any pedestrian bridge, it's got to go through VDOT.
Right.
So that might be the showstopper, even though we could probably design something and build something.
Right.
We'd still be subject to all the VDOT requirements.
Very good. I was through there probably within the last week or 10 days, and where removed all the trees from the rocks and
Mhm.
cleaned up it all looks very nice. And the improvements with the wooden, I guess,
The guardrail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look-
Yeah.
looks
And
very
expose the railroad bent too. We got all that
Correct.
stuff off
yeah.
and
Thank you for cleaning it up and getting a
So-
little polish on it. It'll
So-
look good for the road and river relay, and
Yeah.
these improvements I think will enhance the experience for folks. The and still looking, when you talk about the parking lot concrete permeable paver,
Mhm.
that parking lot will be down here, down by the river.
by the boat launch. Mhm.
Okay, great.
Yep.
That'll very
Yeah.
attractive.
Gotcha.
Very nice.
The only thing we don't have in there that we toyed with, because I know the ask before was about getting some power down there.
Mhm.
Maybe at least running some conduit with this can easily be done.
Mhm.
Doing the power and getting a transformer now, I'm gonna have to ask you for probably another $100,000, to do that. But we were thinking of at least putting the infrastructure as part of this, which would be nominal.
Right.
It could be absorbed within the costs we have, relatively speaking, or we probably even have enough stock in our yard to at least have that added. So it's at least there with a pull string ready to go. We just wouldn't have all the other, like I was mentioning, just sort of the transformers or the switches or whatever else would be necessary. And sometimes you can get Dominion to do that if you just say, I want power here. And
Right.
and that's just part of the installation they'll absorb, knowing that they're going to have, the potential for revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if we have somebody who wants to rent the park and really wants to have a band down there, they can pay to install it. And
There you go. Yeah,
more than one way to skin the cat.
exactly.
Very good.
Question about the road going down to the ramp. I think at one point we had discussed the possibility of a 1-lane. Is this a 2-lane
Yes.
setup?
Yes.
Not a 1-lane with bump outs or turnouts halfway through
Yes.
to help reduce the impact and cost of that? Is that still in consideration?
So it was two-way, and I think they didn't do sort of the little scalloping in that was on the LPDA plan, but there is enough for two-way traffic.
Okay.
So you would still have to kind of go down around either way. I mean, if you were traveling towards the water, you couldn't back up. You couldn't, kind of pull off to the side and, let additional traffic go by you.
Okay. I was hopeful for one way with a turnout or, halfway down the road. So to reduce the impact of the road itself and the cost.
Mhm.
Not possible. You know what I'm saying?
Like one lane,
Yeah,
not
so
one way.
1 lane,
Yeah.
which would be,
Significantly less.
That'd be rough, there's Saturdays I've been out there where
well,
it's
I'm thinking
pretty
about
full.
the road that's next to the river. It's kind of, if you got somebody coming at you, there's a way to get around them without a significantly wide throughway through there. And is this going to be similar in scope or a lot wider than what's down by the river currently?
Oh, you're talking about, okay, now I'm following you. Insofar as down the river itself, where the island, there's a proposed island in there. And then right by the boat launch.
Yeah, I think what
No,
Chuck's
no, no.
asking, for instance, if you go down a country road, two vehicles can pass each other, or you
Yes.
can pass the tractor, but it's not a 2-lane road.
Right.
And so this is, I perceive that this is 1 lane. Two vehicles can pass each other very carefully. It doesn't need to be any smaller, but it's not a 2-lane road.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I think Patrick's saying it is a 2-lane road.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's saying that vehicles can pass each other going opposite direction. You
Right.
get on the country road,
Yes.
it's not a two-lane road.
Okay, but it's wide enough for two cars to pass. You don't
Correct.
have, it's not what Chuck was
If it was
suggesting. a
VDOT
bump out.
two-lane,
Right.
it would
No,
be
it's not that.
substantially,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
We can take a look.
Right.
We can take a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of ways to reduce cost and
Sure,
reduce
sure.
impact to the park setting. Instead of a
Yeah.
big wide strip of asphalt.
Well, like,
We weren't gonna pave it.
Okay, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
lane
But
strip
still,
of gravel.
exactly. I got you. No. I got you. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like we say, some of our city streets that are narrow, they're two lanes, but it's actually a traffic calming device almost that you have to wait and take turns. And currently, the road that goes to the boat launch, you almost have to yield a little bit if a car's coming towards you, and it keeps you from going 30 miles an hour along that road. And this is a straight shot next to a soccer field. If it is clearly wide enough for two cars are going to clearly go fast when they pass each other. If it's more narrow, like Chuck's kind of suggesting, and you actually have to pull over, you wave, yield, people are not going to be flying along that road. I think that's what we're just trying to make sure, because it's in a park, and not overbuild it if we don't need to.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have AECom look at that to see if they're exactly, we can take the width, is there savings there, doing the bump outs as well too, instead of just keeping it too wide.
Just enough.
Yeah, yep,
Thank
sure thing.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Other questions on Jordan's Park? Exciting project. Thanks for all the improvements and looking good.
Sir.
Okay. So wrapping up parks and cemeteries, we're also proposing to improve the restrooms at Brubaker, installing new doors and partitions. And then the Oak Grove expansion, we're proposing in FY25 to do the engineering work to try to keep it in line with the development of the Spotswood property. Any questions on parks and cemeteries?
Just a quick side question. Have we continued to have problems with vandalism at Brubaker?
Are there cameras? How expensive would it be then to install cameras?
Yeah.
For instance, if you have a camera, Miller House, jump onto their Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There. We'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
There's a camera at the skate park, and I think Raro was reaching out to Lexington Police Department about cameras about a month ago is what I think Mr. Coffey was reaching out to the chief about that.
Yeah, the police department installed the camera at the skate park,
Yes.
so.
And so that's why
we-
Raro was reaching out to LPD.
Thank you.
Under stormwater projects and improvements, we really just have the normal maintenance that we have to do each year. We have some other stormwater projects out in future years, and we would like to use monies from the hopefully newly implemented stormwater fee to take care of those projects.
Jen, if I could back up, the Oak Grove expansion, you notice it's not called it's in parks and cemeteries. The real impetus for that is the property that we purchased from those homes at front on Jordan Street there.
Houston.
Houston, yes, thank you. On Houston Street, the sanitary sewer line goes sort of kitty corner across those two small portions of property that we purchased. So we want to do a right angle, so it takes less of that property, so we can use that property in the long term. And so just realign it basically. While we're doing that, we then thought we'd go down that swale right off of the streets there, Taylor Street, that goes through the cemetery for the same reason. Replace that old pipe that's all been there the same length of time, and make sure that what we have in the cemetery is not problematic in the future. You know, right where it is, we know it's, it's very good condition pipe as opposed to what we have today.
And you'll notice that we don't have anything for the jail on the FY25 plan. We just haven't seen any of their documents yet, so we will likely have an addition.
Actually, Jen, if I could correct you, we probably will not have anything for the jail. The process, you have to send a community-based correction plan to the Department of Justice. They accept those plans once a year, December. So we've obviously missed December of 23. A number of reasons we had to go back and look at that plan in more detail. The best we can do is put it together and have it for December of 24, which we anticipate. But then it goes to the governor and through the General Assembly for funding, and that'll take another full cycle because next year the General Assembly won't supposedly meet and discuss those things. You know, normally it's every 2 years. So it'll be a couple of years out before we see anything substantial with the jail.
I think that's for building the new jail, correct?
No, any renovations.
Okay.
Yeah. And if we, well,
Well, that's what I mean, the big project to
the big
increase
project.
capacity,
Right.
right? So do we know though if they're going to have any capital improvements for just regular?
That's correct. We don't know if they're having smaller capital
Okay.
improvements yet. Their budget has not been considered, but the major ones will not be, just to
Hmm.
make sure you're clear of that. The major improvements won't occur in the next couple of years.
Jen, I hope you'll find the jail commission to be a little more cooperative and attentive to delivering information to you.
Did I hear sarcasm?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then as I mentioned briefly, the high school project, there is some talk that that may not move forward in FY25. As of today, it's still in their CIP, but we'll of course take that out if necessary. And then no questions, back to Jim.
Very quickly, we have a few other small areas. The CIP, you'll notice, and I'm sure have seen the police equipment that is being requested. One is for video parking surveillance. A little quirk there. The General Assembly has been discussing making that banning the use of cameras for parking, shall we say.
The proposed bills say they're allowed to be used for parking that they're considering right now.
But at one time they were talking about banning them.
But
And I
right
don't
now,
know
the
if they'll
ones
take-
they're considering, you could use it for parking enforcement.
And so we looked at whether or not we wanted to actually purchase the system pending that legislation. What we're going to do is put a contract in place because we really can benefit by this equipment being available to us. Put a contract in place with the vendor that if the state should ban, if you will, the use of these cameras, that we won't have to pay for that next several years, because we're going to pay for it over 5 years. It's a minor investment over that period of time, but nonetheless, we don't want to have to pay for something that 2 years from now we can't use.
What software do we use now? Because I kind of went back, we bought the Ford Focus in 2017. The car was only $16,000 back then. And back when I came onto council, we were bringing in parking fines over $40,000 a year in parking fines. Now it's dropped considerably. I mean, it's dropped into the teens. One year we budgeted $10,000 in parking fines, but when I came on, we used to collect over 40,000, and and parking tickets used to be $15, and now they're 20 or 25. I mean, and parking is one of the biggest things I hear about from business owners downtown, that they're like, the same cars parked here every day. They don't move it. That's where they work. They know who owns the car. And so I'm kind of like happy to support more parking software to enforce it if we are writing, I hate to say it, more parking tickets to enforce the rules that we have on the books, because business owners are begging for us to move cars along.
Well, nobody's called me. I don't know if they've called the chief about it. I'm just
I've
saying.
told you multiple times about the business owners that I've put, and so I just didn't know if, again, we used to collect over 40,000. Now we collect less than half of that, basically. So I just wondering what up safety is. We always in our budget say we'll do this much tickets, and then up safety parking fines is a separate line item in our budget. Is that our current, what that is.
I'm not sure what that terminology refers
Okay.
to when you say up safety.
Every year we say yeah, well, our budget has two different amounts for parking fines. Okay.
But we will look at enforcement. I mean, I hear that, and certainly I'll have the chief look at it. I would really like to hear directly from the business owners as to what cars, what space. You know, I've heard those concerns out in neighborhoods, and we know from our evaluation, PD goes there, the car's there, and they move it 5 feet. Legally, there's nothing you can do. You don't know if they moved it and came back the next morning or if they just moved it 5 feet, but you can't ticket them. So I don't know downtown if they just move it forward one space and nothing you can do. You know, they've moved their car. But we can watch that if we know exactly what spaces are there. You know?
And that's what I think our software currently does. Our current software, we were told anyways, drives around. No one has to mark chalk on tires, takes a picture of the GIS or GPS. It knows where that car was parked. And if it moves forward one spot, it knows that. But if it's in the same spot for more than 2 hours, it sets off an alert to the officer that that car can be ticketed. I mean, that's what we were told back in 2017.
And that is correct. That's how it works. Unfortunately, it's not working now.
Okay.
And that's been bad for, not quite a year.
When you say it's not working, the software is not working.
The system isn't working. I can't tell you if it's the software or not. I suspect that's true. Probably not as simple as a camera, probably the software.
Are we still paying for it?
I believe it was purchased back when Mr. Siegler said we brought it on board.
Okay, so it's paid off.
Correct.
Okay.
What else?
Other equipment in the police department, you'll see that there's another software system that records, in fact, the law enforcement cameras on every car. That data has to be kept according to state law. So that system is again reaching its obsolescence point, and we have to put in a new system there. It's obviously required, period. We could limp along potentially with the old one, but you get to a certain point where they won't support it because it's just software's too old, the system's too old. They're not going to do it much longer, and it just makes sense for us to go ahead, if you will, bite the bullet and get it taken care of, which is what we propose to do. In the fire department, you probably saw that there's some rescue struts that are being requested. These are replacement items. We do have rescue struts today. Basically, those are designed to hold up a vehicle or a structure so it doesn't collapse on a firefighter or any personnel responding to an emergency in those situations. The new struts, however, are more advanced, and they will actually lift a structure or lift a car so you can get under it and extract somebody who's perhaps trapped in that situation. So certainly much more advantageous than just holding it in place and then somehow you have to physically find a way to lift a structure, lift a vehicle. These are much safer. They can be especially for the individual who's trapped underneath it. Be sure that as you're lifting, it doesn't fall back down on them. So it's basically replacement equipment with more advantages to its use, more safety for everyone involved. The other issue or a piece of equipment is also a replacement, a laryngoscope. Basically, when you have a problem choking or other issues and injuries into the throat, you can get down and see what's happening in the throat. Again, more advanced technology. So it's just a life-saving piece of the equipment, if you will. I wouldn't say it's no cost at all, but based on the ability to work with and save some lives down the road, it's well worth it for the money involved. Okay. I guess that's probably just about all we have, Jen. You've got one. Okay. I know some of you have asked about the high school, but as Jen said, that high school gym, we keep it on that as a precaution almost, if you will. If it's needed, it's there, or note it on the plan, and we, of course, borrow the money with the county. So if there's no need for it, certainly we will not spend it. But at this point in time, we just don't feel it's prudent to take it off the plan. So.
Do we have a general sense if we were to borrow money now and for the city hall, what that rate would be? Like what currently is being just.
Have we got our bond ratings back? Okay.
We have not gone for a bond rating yet. We do that typically when you have an actual borrowing occurring.
Yeah.
You know, if we got a bond rating today and we waited 18 months to borrow money, we probably need to have an upgrade or an update on that. So you just wait until you're immediately ready to borrow, talking with Davenport, knowing we need to borrow for City Hall or the DSS building as well, because we're the fiscal agent. We'll probably go forward sometime in the summer or fall for a borrowing for those two projects.
Because I was kind of looking that if we were to borrow $6 million for City Hall, and if it was mid fives, let's just say an interest rate, we'd be looking at like $480,000 a year for 20 years. So just kind of roughly speaking. And I know we've got the debt service that we're making right now. We all know when that falls off in a couple of years, but that would gobble up a lot of that we're currently paying on Lilburn Downing. So
If you recall in that Davenport study that we did for future debt service and capital projects, that was all factored in. And so I'm not saying it won't cost more money, won't be something that maybe you might struggle with or city council might struggle with down the road, but it has been planned for.
You may have spoken to this, but the evidence library server upgrade.
As I said, that's actually for the vehicles
Gotcha. Okay.
recordings. That's
Gotcha.
what that
Thank
is,
you.
right? In software that's shot basically.
Gotcha.
There was, I have a question about that. There was, I think the chief, to the best of my recollection, mentioned that there was, the data had to be kept for a number of years. Do you remember what that number of years is? I want to say 10 is the number that sticks in my mind.
I suspect your memory is better than mine, Mr. Alligood. I don't recall. I won't hazard a guess.
I remember being surprised at the length of time that data had to be maintained, because it may come up in some proceeding.
Well, that's the rationale, of course, is that we do have that data in case there's a need for it. And it is one of the reasons why we need that new software, because we need more storage capability. So
I imagine it's prescribed by state law. And
Right. It's not, it wasn't 10 for the fun of it.
not arbitrary. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. What else?
well, that's it for the current but the fiscal year in 25. Did not intend to get it tonight into the other out years, if you will. We could start that, but I would suggest or offer that with just under 15 minutes left. Maybe we take a break and we take time to go over the out years at another point in time. Unless you'd like me to just start plowing forward. It's pretty simple, really, and it's pretty straightforward as we get into those out years, but we can certainly go over them for you if you'd like.
One quick question for you, Jim, and then one for council, and then we'll break before our next meeting. On the capital improvement plan, bridges, Route 11 bridge replacement. Which is that the bridge that goes to Public Works?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because that's rated pretty poorly, as I recall, when our CBT rep was here a couple of years ago reviewing. And obviously a very critical bridge for connectivity.
And as a number of people have commented, it's sort of a convoluted intersection of several different streets, but it's, I guess, from an engineering standard, the best that could be done. So.
Very good. Going back to the city manager's original discussion about City Hall renovations, just want to confirm that everyone's on board with renovations. We've budgeted a certain amount. We will see what we will have. I always hate to budget anything because it seems that the renovations come in about that or 20% more. So I'm not sure if we want to eliminate that from our CIP, the 6 million, and see where the bids come in from that standpoint. But I just want to make sure there's no objection to moving forward with renovations versus building new or the additions. So seeing no objections from anyone, just the disgust of cost of things that I share with you. We will stand adjourned and reconvene for our regular meeting at 7 o'clock, and it's now 6:47. Thank you all. Thank you, staff. somewhere. We didn't get the full $10,000. Probably.
The Attorney General just said. Yeah, I guess that's true.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Lexington City Council meeting. Before I officially call the meeting to order, I want to invite folks that would like to sign up. We have a sign up sheet over here for various topics. And the item 8, which is citizens' remarks and comments. And I'll remind everybody that anybody wishing to address council, we are always happy to have public comment. I ask that you sign up prior to our meeting and you will be recognized during the citizens' remarks section of the council's agenda. During this agenda item, I ask that the following guidelines be followed. Number 1, stand at the podium, and for the record, please state your name and if you are a resident of Lexington, Virginia. If you want to be contacted after the meeting, please provide your contact information to the clerk. Please make your comments to the council as a whole. Be brief, state your position, and provide facts. Please provide written statements and/or supporting materials to the clerk for distribution to the council and the city manager. Debate is prohibited. It's a time for us to hear what's on your mind and heart, not to have an exchange or a debate. And lastly, we ask that you speak clearly as we want to hear what you have to say. Council will try to hear everyone who wishes to speak on a subject, and discussion will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. Time cannot be transferred to another speaker. If you represent a group, you may wish to identify other members of your group who are in attendance, and you are limited to 5 minutes. I remind us all that meetings of the City Council are formal proceedings and are recorded. And with that, I would like to again welcome everyone. It's great to see so many bright and shining eyes this Thursday evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. The first item on the agenda, if you all will please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item is consideration of the agenda. Have 2 requests for council to consider. Item 15.1, which is new business, consideration of resolution 2024-01 related to personal property tax relief. I'd like to move that to the next item on the agenda so Karen can share with us and then proceed with her evening. The second is Tyson Cooper, who's at 5.3. I'm not sure when Tyson will arrive, but inviting him to work him into the schedule when he does arrive. Again, so as not to extend his evening. And with those 2 modifications, is there an objection to approval? Seeing none, the agenda is approved with those modifications, and we'll move straight into presentations. And I'll invite Jen Bell to review fiscal year 2024 with the first quarter financial report. Welcome, Jen.
Good evening. So the first, I want to apologize. I mislabeled my subject on the document in the agenda packet. It's the second quarter we're talking about, not the first quarter again. The second quarter financials, the revenues and expenses are pretty much in line with where we would expect them to be. It is looking like, as last year, we will come in over budget on our revenues for the sales tax and meals and lodging taxes. We had a little bit of trouble in the months of November, December, and a little bit into January in receiving the collections. There were some issues with the post office, but I think we pretty much collected all of the. Excellent. Perfect. So Karen's been keeping track of that for us so we could get everything applied to the proper month. Looking at the budget at first glance, while it does look like our revenues are behind last year, I just want to point out that last year we were able to recognize over $4 million in ARPA funds. So removing that, we're actually ahead of where we were at this point last year. And we do expect to be able to recognize additional ARPA funds this year. The report is due at the end of March, so it'll be reflected probably not till the fourth quarter. On the expense side, also things are looking good. We are going to go over budget on our expenses for CSA and VPA. And that it's hard to really budget that amount because it just depends on how many services are used by our community. And with the increased expenses, though, we're also receiving more reimbursements. So I don't think it'll be a big hit to the city. The school board is also looking really good, right where we would expect them to be. And then moving on to the utility fund, revenues are tracking to the budget. We seem to be collecting what we need, and expenses are lower than budgeted. So that's a good thing too. Then moving on to the equipment replacement fund, all of our equipment has been ordered and received with the exception of the 4 I listed here, the trash truck, the bucket truck, the bulk truck, and the new ambulance. They all have very long lead times.
Jen, while you're on the trash truck, the actual cost increase looks like 20,
I think it's 186,000.
right, but budgeted 161.
I will need to look into that. I apologize.
Okay.
It was a carryover from last year, so I'm going to use that as my reason for not remembering exactly.
Yeah, I know I was thinking we had it ordered and it got pushed back because of production issues.
Right.
But just concerned with the price increase.
Absolutely.
Hope it's, yeah,
I'll run that down and get us an answer.
thank you very much.
Were we ever able to sell the other fire truck?
Unfortunately, we thought we sold it and it turned out to be fraudulent. So we are trying again. Any questions?
Unless there's anyone here tonight who would like to buy a used fire truck.
$75,000.
Look great in your driveway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any other questions from council? Excellent. Next item on the agenda, presentation from the Mounted Unit Board. I'll call on the city manager to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Chief Green will tee off this presentation, and we have members from the Mounted Unit Board who will walk through some of the activities that have occurred and where the effort stands today, both from a standpoint of, actual activities related to the horses, riders, equipment, etc., and then the financial standing of the unit. And again, this is separate from the city. Funding has been through the efforts of the Mounted Unit Board, and you'll see all that detail momentarily. I'd like Chief Green to come forward then.
Chief, canter on up.
Sir. So good evening, Mayor, Manager, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update of the City of Lexington's Police Mounted Unit. I will briefly highlight the proven public safety benefits of our Police Mounted Unit and how those advantages can enhance our already safe, inviting, unique city characteristics and charm. Numerous studies, including the FBI analysis, details the unmatched crowd control techniques exercised by mounted units, which quickly disperses large unruly crowds, usually without injury or incident to citizens and law enforcement. An example of this can be noted in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where hundreds of students gathered at an impromptu demonstration became unruly and aggressive that officers could not control. The officers quickly quickly moved out and sent in officers on motorcycles for a second attempt to disband the unruly crowd, which they were not able to do. Those officers left and only 8 officers on horseback were able to go in to the unruly crowd, disband the crowd without further incident, injury to students or law enforcement. While our mounted partners have the rare ability to command respect due to their size, most people will readily move in the direction that the trained horses guide them into. But also, crowds may feel the need to flip over cars or even injure officers, but they are reluctant to harm these majestic animals. With regards to crime prevention and crime reduction, cities with mounted units successfully deploy officers and their horse partners into areas with increased property crimes that have proven rates of crime reduction due to the visibility of mounted officers being seen from far distances by individuals who may be looking to get away with criminal activity. As these suspects survey the area and they normally observe an officer in a police vehicle, once they see that officer and vehicle ride through the area, they know they usually have some time before that officer returns back to that area. But when possible suspects see officers on horseback, they do not know the intent or the direction of those mounted officers, but they are keenly aware that an officer on horseback can quickly gain ground and easily access them or apprehend them should they commit a crime. So with that, brings us into another public safety benefit of increased patrol coverage. Officers on horseback have been known to cover over 3 times more ground than an officer on foot, and obviously much quicker. They can also maneuver through traffic, tight alleyways, narrow streets, and traditionally inaccessible routes by vehicles. This also ties into the effectiveness of search and rescue capabilities of our mounted units to find missing individuals, including our vulnerable population, elderly individuals, special needs people, and children in general. And our city has remote areas that are not easily accessible by vehicles or foot, to include Brushy Hills, Chessie Trail, Furs Mill, Jordan Point, and National Forest areas. Horses not only have the sight advantage and ease of movement in these remote areas, but the added capability of carrying first aid supplies in the need of immediate medical attention if required. So when speaking of specialized units and advantages, money always comes into question. Again, our horses win out over the traditional means of policing. The average cost to fully equip a police vehicle is about $80,000. Compared to our mounted board, what they spent to obtain horses ranging from $0 for a donated horse to $1,200 for a horse. More importantly, a vehicle generally does not spark the conversation for an individual to walk up and say to an officer, "What's the name of your car? Can I pet your car?" But horses are natural magnets that attract people from all ages to approach the police officers and generally spark conversations. So next, the benefits of the mounting unit specifically related to our unique, safe, and vibrant city is the unrivaled sight visibility of a 10-foot officer on horseback to deter criminal activity, bring an added sense of security and positive law enforcement engagement to our residents, business owners, students, and visitors. The height and sight advantage of our mounted officers allows the officer to see over large crowds, spot suspicious activity, locate missing and endangered individuals, maneuver through crowds, and serve as a beacon of assistance should anybody be looking for help from a police officer. This is important to our city due to the charm of hosting over 30 special events a year, with many of those events drawing crowds in the hundreds and thousands of people. Yes, we are a welcoming and safe community with a proven track record of low crime, which continues to attract individuals to our city to either host an event or attend one of our vibrant activities. So having a mounted unit as a resource provides us the extra security of knowing that if needed, these horses can quickly assist with crowd control, reunite missing family members, and take police actions such as making arrests, conducting speed enforcement, writing parking tickets, and yes, all without dismounting from the horse. As an additional note, our mounted units added benefit and resource to our lovely community will be available for our surrounding jurisdictions, as we will be the only mounted unit for a 150-mile radius. City of Richmond is the next closest mounted unit. Also, having this specialized unit has sparked the interest of our newest police officer, who has expressed a passion and desire to be a police mounted unit from the time I conducted our hiring interview. And with that, I'd just like to introduce Officer Stephen Stewart, if he could stand up. So looking at this tall, young, strapping man, we talk about a 10-foot height advantage. He excels that 10-foot height advantage almost on foot right now, but imagine him on top of a horse as well. And furthermore, it's great to say in this day and age, our police department is 100% fully staffed. That means all of our officers are certified, boots on the ground, even our civilian staff, no vacancies, including our part-time employees. But we have a pipeline of qualified applicants, and one of our applicants is a female that specifically said she applied to our city from West Virginia because of our mounted unit. So with that, I also want to touch base on the photos that you see here. These are special needs children from our Rockbridge County High School, where the teacher reached out to us and said she wanted to introduce these children to our animal partners. Once these individuals, our children, came out to the barn, they immediately had no fear of these horses, but love and admiration and a fervent desire to take care of our horses. Because of this, every Friday morning, this teacher brings these children out to the barn and they assist us with the care and maintenance of our horses. And while it may be the highlight of these children's day, it is enriching our servant hearts for our police officers. So if you could just indulge me for a few more seconds to allow photos to speak more volumes of our police unit, mounted unit. This right here is obviously a New Orleans police officer, but what I want you to take note in is the individuals around this officer on horse. He is part of that celebration. The individuals there are glad, they're looking in awe and respect of that officer on horse, but yet that officer and that horse is staying true to their task. If you look, that officer is looking up at that balcony while that horse is listening to the guidance and the movement of where his partner officer wants to take him. That officer has a sight visibility, not just up, but all around him, way over the crowds. And just remember this picture when we go further into other community engagement pictures, and imagine your Lexington police officers being part of one of our many special events in that manner. The next picture, some people may be a little dismayed when we say that an officer is able to give a parking ticket without dismounting from the horse. We know here in the city of Lexington, parking is a gold mine here. And a lot of individuals would love the added ability of officers to be able to enforce parking. So with that, these officers can also enforce parking and speed enforcement from the horse. And just in case there may be people questioning that, hey, that was a truck and, you know, it was about the height of the horse, just wanted to show you with a little bit more smaller vehicle and an even taller horse and taller officer that maybe our officer Stewart over here might be on, they are still trained and able to issue parking citations on smaller vehicles. So with that, I would also like to now turn it over to one of our executive directors from the board unit, Ms. Mona Hazara, who will talk about our community engagement, and I will remain available for any questions that you all may have after the presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. Welcome, Mona.
Thank
Thank you. And as far as how to forward. Okay. Actually, I'm representing Rebecca Logan tonight. She was going to make the presentation, but she had a prior commitment and she could not be here. So I'm actually pretending to be Rebecca, although I know I won't be as eloquent as she is. Rebecca, as you know, is very involved with Main Street. And one of the things she did was to send out a survey last week to the businesses in town and ask for their opinion and their thoughts on what would be their opinion of a mounted unit. And that was, I think, a very good recommendation on her part, because one of the things she said was, in addition to the survey, everybody was very concerned about when there are big crowds in town, the Freedom Food Festival, for example, it's wall-to-wall people. And having a horse-mounted unit can give, again, the added height. And when there are children separated from their parents, when there are issues that may be ongoing, this adds another level of security. Everybody's eating and drinking and having a great time, but the officer and the horse are always on alert. Another is the 4th of July Children's Bike Parade. There are thousands, literally thousands, 2,000 children last year. And there were a couple of children that were separated. Now they were reunited with their families, but having a mounted unit, 2 horses, 2 police, looking for the children with that height would be a tremendous advantage for the city, especially for individuals who have misplaced their child. Again, downtown trick or treat, the same issue. We've got a lot of kids running around, and with the horses, I think it would give an added sense of security and safety. Christmas parade, they could be part of the parade. Let's face it, they could lead the parade, but they would also be engaged. They can go into areas where others may not easily go, and they can be called at a moment's notice to help with certain situations where having a police car would not be that advantageous. The community festival, another event. We sure have a lot of festivals in Rockbridge. It's party time all the time. But the Rotary, for example, is very excited about the mounted unit as well. Now, in all fairness, when Rebecca sent out the survey, and you can read some of the comments, the majority of them were very, very supportive and very complimentary. And they said that they would really welcome the mounted unit in town. So you can read, I'm not going to read the comments, but you can see them right there. But in all fairness, there were also a couple of comments that were negative. And in one of the events, one of the comments was, use your money elsewhere. So that's always an issue. And our treasurer will speak to the money issue. And another comment that was a little bit confusing was one of the individuals said that somehow compared the mounted unit to aggressive flaggers that inundate our city. We're not quite sure what that meant, but it's obviously an issue of education. And we educate the businesses and the store owners that the police on mounted horseback have nothing to do with aggressive flaggers. That's not an issue. But again, it's part of the education process. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, John Murphy.
Thank you, Mona. Welcome, John.
Good evening. Again, I'm John Murphy. I'm the Vice President and Treasurer of the Lexington Mounted Unit. And about this event. Okay, here we go. So I'm pleased to report that we've raised over $56,000 for this effort since this project started. And the fundraising has come from a wide variety of sources, but I'd like to point out that fully 1/3 of that $56,000 has come from enthusiastic individuals who want to see a mounted unit here in Lexington. And when we add the local businesses to that, that's almost half of the funding that we've received to date. I'd also like to thank Mr. Halaz for opening up an opportunity for us to charge parking fees at Lilburn Downing Middle School when the VMI is playing football in town. That's helped us greatly. Thank you very much for that. And we've also received some generous grants from some local organizations. On the expense side, our biggest expense so far has been the purchase of a used horse trailer, which of course we need for the mounted unit operations. We were able to purchase that through a generous grant from the USA Equestrian Trust. And then we also have some other expenses, as you can see on the list there. But most importantly, we have a lot of in-kind donations above and beyond the funds that we've received. So most notably, the mounted unit, the Virginia Horse Center has been very generous in letting us use the what was formerly the Hoofbeats barn at that facility. Max Smith has been providing hay for the horses, and Dr. Logan of the Well Pet Group is providing vaccines. We also have a farrier that's providing services at a steeply discounted rate. So we're very pleased with all those in-kind donations as well. Of course, our fundraising efforts will continue as the monthly expense is roughly about, even with these in-kind donations, it's about $1,500. And so we have a strong balance sheet as we speak, but we'll continue with our fundraising. We just learned last month that a local bank is willing to support us to the tune of about $4,000 a year. And we expect other fundraising programs to continue the support throughout the year. So that's it, unless you have any questions for me.
Members of council have any questions for Mr. Murphy? Good, John, thank you.
I'll turn it over now to Mr. Merce Brook, our president.
So my name is George Mercer Brook IV. I'm a resident of Lexington. I live at 405 Jackson Avenue. And I just wanted to get up. I'll be very brief because I know we're running out of time. I met the chief a little over 2 years ago at a Christmas party. I'd heard what a fantastic person she was and how much energy she had. So I made a point of going to meet her. And as the conversation went along, we got to the mounted unit. And I was hearing about everything, hearing about the police enforcement, hearing about community engagement, community outreach, everything that it could do. I was in. I wrote a check the next day. I loved it. I don't want to repeat too much, but this isn't costing Lexington anything. You know, we've got the horse center has been very helpful. VMI's been helpful with parking. We've got a grant from W&L. We've reached all sorts of money from members of the community. So I think it's a win-win situation for everything. And I want to thank you guys for listening to our argument tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Merce. Appreciate you being with us. Chief, said you should make yourself available for any questions. I don't know if council members have any questions or.
Just a couple. One is, how often do you envision the mounted unit patrolling?
So hopefully, depending on weather conditions and officer availability, at least 2 times out of the week, we would like to have the horses out there. But again, depending on weather, too cold, too hot, and the horses too, we have to take into account the health of the horses. But we would like to have the horses out there at least 2 times in a week.
The other question I have is, do you envision any expansion of the mounted unit from 2 horses, or is that what you want to kind of keep it at?
So we'd like to keep it at 2 officers, but the expansion, we would like to have 4 horses because of the fact, again, horses being a spare, just like human beings, they need rest. They may get hurt. They may get injured, but having 2 more horses would lessen the wear and tear on the other 2. So we want to also take care of the horses. So expanding to 4 horses, but not 4 patrol officers, just still remaining at 2 patrol officers.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
What percentage of the officers are participating? I know you said there's 2 patrol officers, but are some of the others participating in it any other ways or?
No, at right now, it's those two officers. No officers are really participating other than they do come out to the barn when they want to help and participate, but not mucking the stalls or anything like that. The two officers, Lieutenant Pageant and Officer Stephen Stewart, who are involved in the mounted unit, are primarily taking care of the horses and their needs.
Right. So anything related to the mounted patrol is voluntary.
Absolutely voluntary, and the officers have come out to the unit just to see the horses, to see the barn and see the facility, but nothing mandatory or forced on the other officers.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions for the chief this evening? Yes, sir.
Let's say, Chief, I thought we had perhaps a schedule of when we might be seeing the mounted unit out on the streets.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry, it is up there. So we are ready to ride. Tentatively, barring any other health conditions or issues with the horses, we have a tentative date of April 27th for the horses to debut, starting in our downtown district area. So we have enough funding, we have the horses, and training is all scheduled for a tentative date of April 27th. Thank you, sir, for pointing that.
Thank you, Chief. I know that you're available anytime as members of council have questions, but want to thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you and the LPD and team and the volunteer board that has worked so diligently to put this all together and here in mass. Thank you for being with us. I think it's worth noting Virginia Horse Center and specifically Glenn Petty for his contributions and support in making this possible. And Trish Vest has done a great job of training and supporting through the process as well. So I'm sure I'm missing someone, but all the folks that have been involved and support and promote the safety of our community, we're very grateful.
Could
Yes,
the board members actually stand just so we know?
Absolutely. I was gonna ask that. So if all the board members can stand up that are in support and individuals in support of the mounted unit and assist them with the mounted unit, you can stand up too, Mr. Officer. Yes, and thank you, Mr. Petty. One of our most generous donations, I will say, the 10-stall barn rivals any major metropolitan mounted unit that is city paid for. So to have that donated to us with 12 acres of land, I tell you, Virginia Beach has come up and they are in awe of us, and they have 20 horses. But again, our barn rivals any of that. So the generous donation, we thank you and thank all the community members. And I'm sure you'll hear more from them as we go on public comments. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chief. And with a great deal of red-faced and embarrassment, Karen Roundy, will you please come forward? I've moved you to the front and neglected to invite you up. So my apologies, but we're thrilled that you're here and look forward to hearing about personal property tax
Thank you.
relief.
I appreciate you all moving me up. I've got some medical conditions, so I appreciate that. I'm presenting once again. Every year I come to you and say we have to set the personal property tax relief rate. I indicated last year that most of their reserve money would have been spent last year, which it was in the notes that I had sent to you. And based upon the information I have now and projecting like we did last year, as far as new vehicles coming on board during the year, the treasurer and I are recommending 44% for this year. The values overall have gone down about between 7 and 8%. The relief is going to not be 55 anymore. It's going to be 44. In the past, the vehicle that I had been using as an example was the 2008 Honda CRV, which was an average vehicle. And in 2023, the assessed value was $20,775. This year, it's $17,200. Okay. So the taxes last year on that vehicle, after the 55% off, was $415.44. And this year it's $409.36 with the 44%. So I'm asking you to approve the resolution for the 44% so that I'll be able to finalize the book the middle of March like we normally do in order for the treasurer to be able to bill out the personal property in April.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-01, and I'll thank you for your work. And last year you said you were reluctant to predict, but you predicted it would be 43%. And it came in at 44 as your recommendation. So everyone appreciates that,
Thank you.
that little extra relief, but there's the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Before we vote, any questions for Karen? Hearing none, ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Karen, thank you for your time and talents and for the clarity in your presentation and the great example.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Right on time is introduction of the Buena Vista Mayor, Tyson Cooper. Tyson, welcome. Glad you're here, and the floor is yours. Although we tend to hold things to 3 minutes for speakers, so
I will do my best to stay at 3 minutes.
we'll yield.
Thank you. Thank you for having me come this evening. I was elected in November, so I've been serving as the mayor for just 6 weeks now. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was get out and meet all of our friends, our neighbors, and first to introduce myself, and second to say thank you for what you do and for your friendship and partnership. So a little bit about me. I've lived in Buena Vista for almost 20 years now. I came to attend Southern Virginia University. I say I fell in love 3 times, first with the school, second with my wife, and third with Buena Vista. After we graduated, we decided what better place to raise our family than the Rockbridge County area. And so we stayed, and we now have 6 children. Our oldest is 16. Our youngest is 6. They are fighting blues through and through. In fact, our oldest was part of the cross country state championship team this fall. And with any luck, next week, or no, 2 weeks, we'll be part of the indoor track state championship team as well. So fingers crossed. I've served in the community in various ways, on city council, the Chamber of Commerce board, and different boards and things. And one of the things that I've realized is how many people it takes in a community serving to make that community work. I have been shocked. Our clerk of council has been helping me compile a list so that I can visit and thank everyone. I think we're up to 28 different boards and commissions that we appoint people to, or the city works very closely with. And it's a lot, right? Each one of those has between like 5 and 10 people on it. That's a lot of people. And I am profoundly grateful for everything that they do and for their service. Another thing I've realized is that living next to someone makes you their neighbor, right? That's it. But when you start serving your neighbors, that's what builds a community. And when you serve your neighbors with love and kindness, that's what makes it a phenomenal community. And I believe in Buena Vista and the Rockbridge County, we have a phenomenal community. And so again, I'm here tonight to say thank you for being our neighbors, for being our friends. We're grateful for all of the ways we're able to collaborate with the city of Lexington. And we look forward to being able to collaborate in new and hopefully unique and fun ways in the coming months and years, excuse me, coming months and years ahead. The last thing I'll share is an invitation. So something that I've tried to do, and it's taking its toll on my wife because I'm gone so much, but is spend time in the schools. And so on Monday, it's a holiday for me at work, but I'm going to spend that time at one of our elementary schools reading to the children. And this isn't the first time I've been able to do it this year. Hopefully it will not be the last. It's wonderful. If you haven't been in your schools, if you haven't been to the library to read to the children during story time, I invite you to do it. And if that's not your cup of tea, find some other way to serve. I really believe that we have the best community on earth, the Rockbridge area, and it only gets better as we serve each other. So thank you again for your friendship, for being our neighbors, for being wonderful neighbors. And thank you for giving me a few minutes this evening. So thank you all.
Tyson, thanks for being with us and
pleasure.
congratulations on winning the election. And the city of Buena Vista is certainly better off with your leadership and look forward to collaborating continuously and working together. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
now go home and visit your wife. Fair enough. Fair enough. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing in consideration of ordinance 2024-02. And I'll call on Jen Bell.
Hello, I have just a few budget adjustments that I would like council to hopefully approve tonight. First, we are in the middle of the early voting for the presidential primary. And it's our practice not to actually budget for the primaries. We just do an appropriation once we know we have one. So I would like to request $17,622 for the registrar for expenses associated with that election. Next, I'm requesting $18,895 for IT for expenses associated with our server license requirements. Ours are from 2016 and upgrading them will help improve security. Next, for the school board, they have requested an appropriation of $51,551 from their future capital needs reserve fund in order to repair lockers and locks at LDMS, to do some painting at Waddell, and then also replace the lighting system at Lilburn Downing. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jen. Members of council have any questions for Jen regarding these numbers? Hearing none, would ask for council's consideration.
I'll move to approve,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you
Let me
gotta
do a
close the
public hearing first,
Okay.
yes. Thank you. Get excited about these things. Jen, thank you for the report. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing, and if there's anyone who would like to speak to council about this matter, would invite you to come forward now. Not aware of anybody that's signed up. And seeing the eyes pointed this way with no hands in the air, I will close the public hearing at 7:41 and ask for council's consideration.
I'll move to approve the ordinance 2024-02 that incorporates the budget amendments for the second quarter of fiscal year 24.
Second.
Have a motion and a feuding second. And I would ask for any discussion from council.
Just point of clarification. If the public read the newspaper this week, it referenced this $51,000 in the context of them approving their FY25 budget. But maybe it just, for point of clarification, the article is maybe about the budget and then separate the request for this $51,000, not all encompassing, because if it's a little, so just clarifying, they're not moving something from the FY25 budget
Right.
up to FY24.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, would ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Jen, for keeping the beans counted. Next item is consideration of minutes from February 1, 2024 City Council meeting. They're included in your agenda. And unless there's an objection, we will approve those. Any modifications to those? They are approved. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Citizen remarks and comments. We've got several people who are signed up and we look forward to hearing from all of you. And remind you that we do ask that you work to keep your remarks to 3 minutes and make them directly to council. And we look forward to hearing from you. First on the list is Gladys Hopkins. Gladys, you're on at the mic. Welcome. And Mona, you're on deck.
Gladys Hopkins. I live at 317 South Main Street in Lexington. I'm here tonight to show my support to the Lexington Mounted Police Unit. We're gearing up to come down to downtown for our debut sometime this spring. I believe we're shooting for April 27th. The mounted unit will be an added attraction to our already active and vibrant downtown. Mounted officers will be available to the public through their participation in numerous community events. I'm keeping this short and sweet. I would also just like to say that I am most grateful to the many civic organizations that help make Lexington a town that I'm proud to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Gladdy. Couldn't agree with you more. Mona and Ann Hopkins, you're on deck.
Thank you again for listening to me. And this time I'm representing myself, whereas before I was speaking for Rebecca Logan, more or less. Couple of items. In Richmond, the mounted unit has the highest level of citizen contact of any unit in the department, and that's pretty impressive. During a 5-hour patrol in Richmond, it's not uncommon to have genuine conversations with about 30 people, many of whom recognize the horses and the officers. That's really what I call community engagement. And a horse is a conversation piece and approachable. I think somebody said earlier, I believe it was Chief, you can't, what do you call your car? You don't pet a car, and you can't pet a motorcycle, but you can pet a horse. And these horses are incredibly trained. The horses can also give demonstrations. The SPCA has already called and asked if the mounted unit could be part of their animal adventure camp this year. The canine unit's involved, and now we're going to have the horse unit, which I think is even far more exciting than canine. And then finally, we are horse country. We've got the Virginia Horse Center. I mean, this is part of what we are. And Lexington, I think the tourists, and we do count on tourists, they're going to be really awed when they see the mounted unit around town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Thanks for being with us. Ann Hopkins and Nancy Guzmano on deck. Did she take off? Thank you. Debbie Pollard on deck.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us all to speak to you directly. I'm Ann Hopkins, 110 Colonial Lane at the end of the alley. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you about the Lexington Mounted Unit that exists in our city, and thanks for giving me a voice. I wholeheartedly support this unit and recommend that the Township Committee continue supporting it as well for the following reasons. If you value peaceful interactions, communications, and relations between all people and our police department, please continue your support. I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer, and I have seen the value that preventive, ongoing, in-person, positive, and peaceful efforts have in the long run to unite a community. In times of trouble, the bank account built of goodwill that a program such as this would encourage, that it encourages towards the police department and authority in general, will potentially yield rich interest benefits of safety, support, loyalty, and communication if or when future times of trouble occur in our city. Point number 2, prevention. Prevention is much easier and cost-effective than repairing a situation gone bad. After working as a hospital social worker for over 30 years, I've seen the effects of when people plan and take care of themselves, and when they think they are saving money and don't invest in their health. In this analogy, if our community is the patient, please continue your ongoing dollar cost averaging in this program to ensure our future health. Remember, prevention is so much more cost effective than repair of a broken situation. Next point, a community is built, by the way, this Mr. Cooper provided a great segue for this piece of my little talk. A community is built not by laws, force, chains, or ropes, or threats of excess authority. It is, in fact, a tapestry of diverse individuals who cooperate, trust, and communicate with each other. The foundation of a great community, such as ours, is trust and communication and respect. One of the multiple threads in the Lexington tapestry is this program that we're here to talk to you about. And it increases trust, communication, and respect of our police department. Lastly, I believe it will be good for tourism and a talking point for visitors. It gives an additional historical look to our historical and beautiful and peaceful community. We have the Virginia Horse Center here, for gosh sakes, and our equestrian visitors will love seeing this unit around town. Please continue your support for the Lexington Mounted Unit Incorporated. Keep Lexington's tapestry as strong and vibrant and beautiful as it can be. Prevention is so much more cost-effective. Thank you again for giving us all the chance to speak to you.
Thank you, Ann, and thanks for sharing those perspectives. Debbie Pollard, and on deck, Lisa Tracy. Welcome, Debbie.
Good evening. I'm not here to talk about horses.
Okay.
I'm here to talk about the flag policy, which I read about in the paper. I want to express my opposition to any changes to the existing flag policy for several reasons. I personally believe that hanging multiple unfamiliar flags up and down our main street and across our bridges is a real distraction when people are driving. We already have 3 different flags that we put up there over various holidays. And I certainly think that that's enough, especially when they're on a windy day and they're wrapping themselves around the pole. But from a practical standpoint, I think asking our city workers to be continually putting up and taking down different kinds of flags is a real waste of our resources. There's so many more things that our city workers can and should be doing. And I'm concerned about the expenses of purchasing lots of different kinds of flags and then storing them. These flag poles are on city property and they're paid for and supported by local taxes. I don't believe it's appropriate for our city to be advertising or promoting organizations that the city does not fund, or that they do not pay taxes to, or that those organizations do not pay taxes to the city. I was under the impression that our existing flag policy made its way to the Supreme Court a few years ago, and that it was upheld by the Supreme Court. I believe it was upheld primarily because no preference was shown to any group other than the city, state, or federal governments. I may be wrong, but that's the way I've read it. And once we start hanging up flags for schools or other governments, we might as well open the floodgates to many more requests. As soon as, somebody gets their foot in the door, it just becomes a continuous battle. And I'm kind of certain that the city council doesn't want to spend its time mulling over every request that comes forward to hang up flags from different schools, nonprofits, and other organizations. And if there's a dispute, then we're spending more money on legal fees. In the article in the paper, it said something about flags for Washington and Lee and VMI. I know we did that at one time, but to give you an example, Washington and Lee is a private school. So if we're going to hang a flag for Washington and Lee, are we going to hang a flag for a nonprofit Montessori school or a non-affiliated private school or a Christian school? So I just think we're going down the road the wrong way. And I don't believe we should be flying flags of different states or countries. If dignitaries are less welcome, dignitaries are no less welcome if we don't fly their flag when they come to town. So again, I would request that you all consider keeping our flag policy sweet and simple. Nothing changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Lisa Tracy, and we have Ben Yuji on deck.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Lisa Tracy, and I'm a lifelong horse lover, but I'm also here to talk about the flags. So, I'm a former Lexington resident. I grew up here. I now live in the county, but I shop in Lexington. I go to church in Lexington. Lexington is the center of our community. It is the heart of our community. And when I come into town on a special holiday and I see our nation's and our state's flags hanging on those flagpoles on Main Street and across the bridge, I feel pride and admiration. They are grand, they are elegant, and there's a certain simplicity to having them there together. We are citizens of the United States of America. We are citizens of the state of Virginia. So those flags are appropriate to be on our municipal flagpoles. There has been discussion about the school flags, as Debbie mentioned. And what I would like to say about that is our city also provides organizations and schools the opportunity to put banners across some of our main streets, such as Main Street and Nelson, to advertise their causes at appropriate times so that that venue is open. And I also think that our downtown merchants do a superb job of welcoming alumni, parents, and other visitors to our town. I also think that when a visitor comes from out of town on a special day and sees our American and state flags flying, they feel that same sense of pride and admiration that I feel, and a sense of inclusivity, because we are all citizens of these two places. So I recall in 2011, council listened long and thoughtfully to arguments that were made about various flags being flown, and council gave long and thoughtful consideration to all points of view. Everyone was heard, and the decision was made to limit our flags on our flagpoles to municipal flags. I think that that's the appropriate decision. I don't see any reason to change it, and I would ask you all please to consider the old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thanks for acknowledging a former city resident and currently a Rockbridge County resident. Ben Yuji, come on down. And Otis Mead, you're on deck. On deck.
Good evening. My name is Ben UG. I live in the county, right just past the Moose Lodge. I'm also a member of the Mounted Unit Board. My wife Laurie and I moved here 2 years ago from Raleigh, North Carolina. In 2017, I retired from the Raleigh Police Department. I was very fortunate to have been a police officer. I loved what I did. I do it better, learned a lot, but I love what I did, and that's my family down there. I came out of the Palms a couple of summers ago, saw the horses across the street, walked over, and next thing you know, I'm on the mounted board. I think it's a great idea. If the chief wanted a helicopter, probably would not support that. But I'll tell you what I learned in my time, my 24 years as a police officer. Most of it was spent in investigations. The last 16 was as an investigator, from everything from robbery to drugs to the sex trades. The success that you have in police work is the ability to talk to people, to interact with people, to get them to want to talk to you. Police work comes with a natural gap, a big gap right here, because you hold authority over people. The law says that you can take people's freedom from them, not just take them to jail, but if it comes down to it, you can take their life. That gap gets bigger when you have a George Floyd. It goes from being this big, the man is this big, and it's just not in Minnesota, it's everywhere. Everybody sees you as those officers. Bridging that gap takes work, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of honesty. I'll tell you something. You stand out on the corner with a fireman, people love firemen, whatever. They come over, they tell them, thank you for everything. You know, they love these guys. You take a police officer, stand them on the corner, nobody comes over and talks to you. You take a mounted unit like we had in Raleigh, and you put them out on the street in a downtown district, in the financial district, people were all over these horses. They were bringing their children up. They were talking to them. They want to know about the care of the horse. They want to be able to pet the horse. Can they give the horse a treat? That's closing the gap. I was never on the mounted unit, but that closes the gap and it spreads out to help out us investigators and what we're doing. It helps the tactical teams. It brings it together. You can't go around knocking heads anymore. 60s and 70s looking around. You know, I'm 60 years old. I grew up in Virginia Beach. You acted up, Virginia Beach took you around the corner and they squared things away. Here, you can't do that anymore, or you guys are writing checks. A horse brings people together and they allow you to bridge that gap, bring that gap a little bit closer. I think this is a great idea. Let's give it a shot. Chief wants a helicopter? Nah. Horses? Yeah, let's put the horses out there and let's let them help us to bridge the gap. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.
And welcome home, and thanks for being with us this evening and for your contributions on the board. Otis Mead, come on down. And Glenn Petty, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for hearing me out. I came to Lexington 57 years, 3 months, and 5 days ago because I thought it was a neat town to be made a little neater. I didn't go to school here. I just thought it was be a fine place to live. I think that this is my 6th council meeting in that number of years. I remember the number 4th one when there was a very prominent leader who said that we did not need a tourist program here in Lexington. All those strange people coming to town with a snotty-nosed kids walking up and down our streets. If you remember, about less than a year ago, the biggest resignation party I've ever seen was when Gene retired from one of the finest tourist programs in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Do we need, I understand there is a need among council that we don't need horses in Lexington. We didn't, at that time, there were prominent people who said we didn't need tourists in Lexington. Let's think about that. I remember the marvel of one of the few trips I've ever taken in my life was to London. And I was absolutely amazed. And Sue Ann had a hard time getting me off the street, watching the men on horses, getting off the horses and helping children across the street, little old ladies and little old men. So what is the need for a horse? It is part of our tourist program. You know, I always enjoy waking up late in the morning when the carriage is coming by. People who come to town to ride in our horse carriages up and down the street, they always stop a half block away from me. Do we need them? What is need? Lexington is a very special place. Do we need tourists? Yes. It is the second largest industry in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we had people, prominent people here said, we don't need those people walking up and down our streets. So let's think about that, gentlemen and ladies. Do we need horses? We need romance. And we need more people to come and appreciate this marvelous small town that we have. I don't need 30 more seconds.
Well, thank you for referencing romance the day after Valentine's Day. And thank you for being with us, Otis, and for the perspective and the history and quite a strong regional tourism directory that we do have. Mr. Petty, welcome.
Glenn Petty. I have a home at 8 Chamberlain Loop in Weatherburn. And I made a commitment when I came here to invest in Lexington, and I'm very proud that I did. The Virginia Horse Center is very pleased to house the mounted unit. And even though I'm retiring here March the 8th, it's not just a handshake that we've made the commitment to continue to provide housing, but we have a formal document signed where we are committed to providing housing free of charge. Out-of-pocket expenses, we're going to let the mounted unit board pay for, like feed and bedding. But I have a home and a farm and business in Raleigh. And I went to school at NC State in 1966, and except I've maintained a home there ever since. But I have interacted with the Raleigh mounted unit over the years, with the NC State University mounted unit. And what I found, and we've heard talked about PR, tourism. We have had at my wife and our horse shows, for our major shows, we have a color presentation by one of the two mounted units. It's amazing outside before they come in or before they go out, the kids that go up and just want to love the horses and visit with the officers. It's good police PR. But a recent experience that we had a horse show across the street from Carter Finley Stadium on the Saturday when NC State was playing Duke University, and on move-in, there was a horse that got loose and ran through the traffic. All the crowds that were coming, the NC State University mounted unit helped us contain that horse 1.5 miles from the stadium. And that was one thing. The other thing that I've watched all these mounted units do over the years is for the major events, they are wonderful patrol for the parking areas. I mentioned earlier I'll be retiring on March the 8th, but I'm going to be back with you on March the 7th for the your council meeting, and I'm bringing my successor, who I would like to introduce to you. And I wish him the great cooperation that the Horse Center and the city council and the city has had. And thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate you being here, and appreciate your service at the Horse Center. It's several members of council were actually at the BMX last weekend, and what a remarkable event and use of that space, not limited just to horses. So thank you very much. Next on the list is Tish Vest. Tish, if you'd like to speak tonight. Welcome. Glad you're here. If you could state your name and if you're a resident of Lexington, Virginia.
Hi, my name is Tish Vest, and I'm a Rockbridge County resident. I live in Natural Bridge, and I run Wind Horse Farm that's out there in Natural Bridge. I've been there for 26 years this summer, and I have really been enjoying working with the officers to prepare them to be ready to participate in the mounted unit. We've worked on riding, horsemanship, horse care, horse safety, and I've been doing my best to expose them to as many things as possible to prepare them to be ready to participate in the mounted unit. And I'm enjoying it, and plan to continue to do my best to have them ready to be out there in public as soon as possible. That's all.
Awesome.
But I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, you're the best kept secret around the corner from Great Valley Farm Brewery, if I remember correctly. So
It's nice
some
for
people
giving-
get distracted.
Nice for giving directions. Yeah.
But grateful for your support with training of the horses and the staff as well. So thank you. The many years of experience. Wonderful. Thanks for being with us this evening. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening on any topic that may be on your mind or heart or on the agenda? Mr. Petty.
BMX USA race. I would like to report that we are being told it is now the largest race held in the United States to date for that organization right here in
Fantastic.
Lexington.
Fantastic.
And we haven't got the statistics yet, but I think it's going to be huge. Last year, residents came from 42 different states. I think it's going to be more this year. I'm told that there was a track meet at VMI, and the closest hotel rooms they could find was in Roanoke. Of course, you had the Moot convention, but
yes.
also the BMX race.
Yes, thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? Not seeing anyone, we'll close the citizen remarks and comments at 8:09 and move straight into the consent agenda. And we'll ask for council's consideration.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Unfinished business, discussion of an amendment to the zoning ordinance. I will ask the city manager. I'll invite Arnie to address this issue.
Good evening to you all.
Arnie, before you start, mounted folks, thank you all for being with us. Have a great evening. Go right ahead.
A good evening to you all. As you know already, there were two public hearings already held, one in November, one in December. Had a work session as well. And at your last public hearing, I covered three quick items, which were a quick little adjustment to the lot requirements table, which is a reference to that. Also, the consolidation and reorganization of the short-term rental section, an adjustment to the utility section to require system development fee and also a minimum monthly service charge. And then you held a discussion about occupancy, and you deferred to this meeting. I believe the public hearing is still open, but you deferred to this meeting so that Councilmember Betts could provide some additional material. And just to make you aware, what was advertised at your last public hearing was an ordinance that had an occupancy limit of no more than 2 horses per stall.
No.
So if you go over that amount.
Two horses
per stall.
I thought I could tie it to a nice fuzzy end and get through all this a lot quicker.
See who's paying
Perhaps not.
attention.
Yeah.
So you could this evening, if you decide collectively to limit it or to keep it at 2, that was what was advertised. If you go above 2 to 3 or whatever number, I will need to re-advertise for another public hearing just to make you aware of that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You were just making sure we were awake, weren't you?
Yeah.
I'm trying to tie it to a nice fuzzy end, increase my options or chances.
So if we do decide not to go with 2 people, we would have to make the decision at the next meeting.
At least at the next meeting, I've got to make sure I check the calendar, but I'd have to re-advertise. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Very good. Thank you, Arnie. Any questions that council has? I have one question. Sometimes my memory isn't as good as I'd like for it to be, but I know I was thinking that one of the expectations I had shared for more than 2 or a change into the ordinance that's been presented was to get information out to council beforehand. And I'm not aware, did members of council get language
It's in the meeting
from
packet.
Mr. Betts? Okay. Okay.
So
Very good.
I assumed that.
Very good. I was looking for an email, so
Okay, well, it was emailed in the meeting packet. I would assume that we would have all read the meeting packet.
very good. Safe assumption, to be sure, Well, I'd ask for council's discussion and or
Are we still
consideration.
doing a public hearing? Did we
Uh,
keep it open from before? Or I don't know if we have to.
I did do that, yes. So I said my memory's not as good as I'd like for it to be. And I appreciate the support.
The only point on the public hearing to what Arnie was
Mhm.
saying, whether it was kept open or not, and I don't have a recollection. If you want to go to a more intensive use, because that hasn't been advertised, there could be people who would want to speak on 4 people in an ADU, or they didn't want to speak on 2 people in an ADU. So if there's an inclination to increase the intensity of the use, you do have to re-advertise. We'd have to wait anyways, or if that's council's intention.
Very good. Well, keeping the public hearing open, is there anyone who would like to speak to this item of accessory dwelling units in residential zoning districts? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 8:13 and ask for council's consideration.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and I've already talked to most of council members about this, but Planning Commission spent about a year drafting the proposed ordinance. We were at odds on things such as setbacks and building size, but we were able to settle those issues when we decided to treat ADUs as granny flats by setting the maximum number of occupants at 2. A few points to note with the proposal of 2 + 2 occupants. 1, the ordinance only requires 1 parking space per ADU. With the proposed changes, you could have as many as 4 drivers in an ADU. R2 does not allow 2-family dwellings. This creates an inconsistency and a loophole with our current zoning. Properties with ADUs are not required to meet the minimum lot size or lot width requirements for 2-family dwellings or the setbacks for a primary dwelling. Planning Commission allowed for more lenient or reduced setbacks because an ADU is supposed to be a less intensive use than a primary residence. As noted in the definition, an ADU is defined as incidental and subordinate to the primary structure, and that's meant in both size and activity. Planning Commission loosened setbacks and size requirements because it was only intended for 2 people to live there. Allowing 4 people in an ADU will create a major obstacle for permitting non-conforming structures to be used as ADUs. And as you read the ordinance, if you have an existing building on your property, it could become an ADU going through the CUP process, and we waive a lot of the requirements such as setbacks, building size, even building height, but you do go through that CUP process. And if you're going to start allowing 4 people, then that could start causing some problems. So you might have a building that's a couple feet from the neighbor's property line. Neighbors might be okay with that if 2 people are living there. However, a family of 4 is a much more intensive use that many would say requires more of a buffer in a neighborhood of single-family residences. Our average household size in the city is less than 2.0 people, and it was actually 1.91 in 2016. And this is from our comprehensive plan. Almost 1/2 of the households in Lexington consists of 1 person, while just 6.5% include 4 or more persons. In addition, just 13.4% of households in Lexington include children. That was from the 2020 comprehensive plan. Our situation is that more than half our population might be in a position where they would like to downsize. So let's provide an option to free up oversized housing so a family can have a suitable space without disrupting single-family neighborhoods. If City Council wants to move forward with allowing a family to live in ADUs, the setbacks should be greater than that for a single-family residence, and ADUs should be prohibited in R2. Also, the requirements for non-conforming structures need to be reevaluated. While we made ADUs permissible through CUPs, I think most of Planning Commission, if not all, hope that they would become by right uses after a test period. I don't think we'll ever get there if we allow 4 people to live in the neighbor's backyard. And getting to the city manager's recommendation about, okay, keep the detached at 2, allow the attached be a family to live in it. Well, that becomes a 2-person dwelling or a duplex. And again, we already have rules in place for duplexes in R1, and R2 doesn't allow them. So I would recommend that that council goes along with all the work that Planning Commission has done on this and approve this ordinance.
So I'd like to respond to a few of Councilmember Strawn's points that she made. In terms of Planning Commission taking a year to work on this, that's true. The Planning Commission did not take a year studying occupancy. My understanding is occupancy was discussed at 1 meeting. And I looked through the minutes. I saw it discussed in August of 2024. So it's possible it just didn't make it into the meeting minutes, but from my understanding, occupancy was kind of discussed and resolved in one in one meeting. That's just my understanding based on looking at the minutes. In regards to our population aging, that is exactly why we should allow families into this community, so that there will be people that live in this community that will be in a position potentially when houses come on the market to buy those houses. If we have a bunch of people going to sell property at the same time, it will drop everybody's property. It will potentially drop people's property value if there are not buyers to step in. We would be totally reliant on people coming from outside of the community to fill those vacant housing, units if everybody goes to sell at the same time, unless there are people in the community who can buy them. And as Councilmember Strawn pointed out, there is a lack of families in this community based on the statistics that we have to buy those housing units. The average family I believe in America is 3.1 people. The average household size is 2.58 people. So we are excluding essentially half of households and the normal family by leaving the occupancy at 2 people. So those are some of the things I wanted to point out in regards to that. The language that I came up with, 2 adults and 2 minor children, was to address parking. A child below the age of 16 cannot drive. So this would reduce the amount of potential, cars on any given place. And so that's why I've been trying to come up with a compromise, and City Council's been looking at this issue, or I had first raised this in November. So 3 months ago, 4 months ago. I feel like City Council has been made aware of this concern for several months, and we've been studying it at least like intensively for a month. So, Planning Commission, I understand, has made a recommendation. It's City Council's job to either take that recommendation or to not take the recommendation. Generally, I think Planning Commission did a good job. I just disagree with the occupancy limits. And I would also point out that the short-term rentals are a loophole. And in this whole thing, there will still be people that have, it's not even just 2 individuals, it's 2 adults. So in a short-term rental, you could have an exponential amount of people in a short-term rental. It's the way the language is written, per bedroom. So you could have, it just says 2 adults per bedroom. And the first compromise that I tried to propose was 2 individuals per bedroom, not even 2 adults, which is a looser restriction in the short-term rental ordinance. Then I came back with another proposal that you all can see in your meeting packets of 2 adults and 2 minor children to try to address essentially the parking issue, because there would be less adults, so there'd be less chance of vehicles. I would even consider, although this is not really something that I'm super favorable towards, but I do believe in compromise. I would be willing to take the original language and go with 3 people. And that is the average family size in America. That is the, close to, the average household size. So I think 3 people is a reasonable compromise if council's uncomfortable with the language that I came up with. And so, I can vote for 3 people with the language that Planning Commission put together. My understanding is there's other cities that have 3 people. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to have 3 people. My understanding is Planning Commission even started by talking about 3 people, and that was later changed. So I would be willing to even go away from the language that I proposed, go with 3 people if we can find that compromise. I absolutely cannot vote for this at today with 2 people.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Other members of council, any other further discussion?
Was there ever any discussion about minor children not even being counted in the occupancy? That if a child is an infant up to age 1, or in some places infant to 3, they're not even considered as part of the occupancy count. If we were to establish an occupancy standard in that regard, then you could have the 2 household limit, and you don't even discuss the children. And then when that tenant and the landlord works out their lease, then there could be an understanding that once that landlord is at a point where the size of the household is not where they want it to be, then there could just be a non-renewal of the lease rather than an eviction. But in some places, children are not even counted as an occupant. So we can continue to say the limit is 2 and not even discuss children. And you really shouldn't even be discussing children because it gets involved in familial status and all of that. And then it gets a little hairy. But you can limit the number of persons who live in the unit as long as you don't specify how many of those people can be children.
Which I think that's important to note. I mean, that's what the issue came up with, is what is proposed does agree with the Fair Housing Act by trying to make it 2 + 2, two adults and 2 children. It violates
That's wrong.
the Fair
I'd
Housing
ask
Act.
legal counsel to weigh in on that. That's wrong.
I don't know that it violates it. Based on my review of the Fair Housing Act, you cannot discriminate against an adult who has a child, and a child is somebody who is 18 or under. And if you set the number at 18, you likely comply with the Fair Housing Act. If you set the number lower, I did express to Nick my concern that would create an issue because you would be creating a space, like say you set it at 10 or 5. You are then singling out children, minor children, as recognized by state law, and state law is what uses 18 as the number for minor in the Fair Housing Act. Then you have that gap between 10, for example, and 18, where you are saying that you can't have a child in there. That I think would create an issue. But I think if you used 18 as the break point, it likely is okay under the Fair Housing Law. Again, I think there are avenues for challenge. In a conversation I had with Jim, what I mentioned to him was if you have an 18 break point, at some point, why can you have a 17-year-old in there but not have a 65-year-old grandparent in there, for example? That is my concern, is where you may see a challenge. Somebody could say that the break point does violate it because it discriminates not against family necessarily, but against somebody based on age or some other criteria. So I do think there are some avenues for challenge. I don't think it violates the act. That's my opinion, but that doesn't mean it would be impervious to being challenged.
I have a question. If we change from 2 persons to 2 adults per accessory dwelling unit, do you think that does? No. Okay.
Two persons. You mean back to the original?
So we go
language
back to
too?
the original language and then just take out persons and put adults.
No, I don't like that
You
because
don't
I
like
think one of the advantages of the language from the planning commission is you can have a mother and daughter in there. You can have a father and son in there. And so that's why I've said all along, it doesn't discriminate against familial status.
Oh, no.
Because-
Oh, I guess what I was trying to say, scratch that. Never mind. I was trying to express something different.
Okay, I
But
misunderstood.
okay,
I'm
no,
sorry.
okay. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
I guess I'm a big picture kind of person. And so in the grand scheme of all this, and that my frustration 2 weeks ago was where are we going with this? And after thinking about it, and all of the various types of housing that we have the potential to add in Lexington and Rockbridge County, the ADUs are just part of that. We have the cottage housing conversation that's going to be starting. Affordable housing options are conversations ongoing in the community. We're going to have market rate housing through the roof in regard to what Echelon plans to do. So this is just part of the solution that we need for housing. This is just one of 3 or 4 different types of housing. So this is not the solution for all the problems that we have. There are going to be problems for a while because housing is expensive to build. It's going to take a while for it to be built. this just helps to solve one part of the big scheme of problems that we have in regard to elderly folks wanting to downsize. So, you know, we just need to make a decision, stick with it, spend a year figuring out if what we have decided works, and then go back and tweak it in another year or two. I don't think we'll be inundated with ADUs. We might have 2 or 3. It's kind of like the chickens. How many chickens do we have in the city? Probably none or a few. So we probably just need to calm down a little bit and see how this current plan is going to work, and then go back to the drawing board to make some changes down the road if this isn't working the way we intended.
And to your point, Miss Alexander, one of the things that Arnie had mentioned earlier was the notion of starting more conservative, and then you can expand later if you want to. That opportunity would be there if you decide to. Certainly, you can amend this down the line if you go in this direction and increase.
I'll just offer that when you set a policy in place, it does, people are going to sign leases, people are going to decide that they don't want to do long-term rentals, potentially, that it's easier to just administer short-term rentals, and then they get on, you know, doing that. So, and you know, and in terms of other housing options, this is the housing option we have before us today. It's possible there will be other housing options, but we just don't know until they're physically in the ground. And that I would just offer that.
I would just like to see us clean up a little bit in regard to the situation if instead of an adult and a child, if there are 2 adults in the household and they have a child, adopt a child, or whatever the case is, what happens at that point? Because we don't want to leave that landlord or that family hanging as to what to do.
But I don't think that needs to be part of the ordinance necessarily. I mean, Arnie talked about what he would do from an enforcement standpoint, as you tell the landlord
Yeah, I like
you're in
that.
violation, and then the landlord,
Renews or not.
right, yeah, at least time can figure it out.
So they'll be telling them that they're in violation. So they're either in trouble with the city, and essentially they won't probably renew because they're not going to want to get in trouble with the city. I mean, so I mean, I really think this has the potential to have an impact on people's lives. I just want it to be fair to all citizens of Lexington, and I want to have diversity demographics in the city. And that's why I'm fighting so hard on this. I mean, I understand the concerns. I think everybody up here has goodwill. We just have difference of opinions. But I really, I think out of fairness and then an economic vitality for the city, that we really should at least like allow for families in this new type of housing that we are putting, you know, putting out there.
If we were to proceed tonight by taking a vote on something, am I correct that we again can only vote on ordinance 2024-01, the zoning amendment 2023-01, right? Okay. You know, the comp plan was something that the community worked on for over a year, 2 years. I mean, it was a very lengthy process. The comp plan talked about introducing ADUs into the city of Lexington. We tasked our planning commission to work on it, and they did. The planning commission had multiple members during that time. Folks weighed in. It was all done in a very transparent way. People could attend the planning commission's meetings and weigh in during that whole process. Mr. Oligood probably attended every meeting of the planning commission during that time and is aware of all of the conversations. And I'm appreciative of the planning commission and staff's work on this. And my goal is that we accomplish this that was in the comp plan and then reassess in a year. I think that's what Ms. Alexander is was speaking to, and I would like to make the motion in support of kind of your thoughts, Ms. Alexander, and that I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-01 and zoning amendment 2023-01 as was presented back at our February 1 meeting. And that is actually what came from the planning commission with the minor changes about the water. That's what we kind of tinkered with a little bit. That is the only change from what the planning commission sent to us.
We did have some changes about the interplay with short-term rentals after the work
Yes,
session.
we did. Yes, you're right, Jeremy. I'm sorry. But as far as occupancy, yes,
I
sir.
only bring that up to make sure we're all talking about the
Yes,
right
sir.
ordinance.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yes.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Thank you for the clarity in that motion and the observations. Council discussion. We've had robust discussion, but I invite more.
I'll just say one last thing, that I just don't think it's fair that you have 2 adults per bedroom in a short-term rental, and that you have limited to 2, like, that you can rent to 4 or more people in a short-term rental, but not in a long-term lease. I find that very unfair, and that's why I'll be voting against it.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Any further discussion?
A question for Jeremy. Were you meaning that an 18-year-old would not necessarily be considered part of that family of 2?
Under the existing ordinance that's proposed? No, I mean, there is no limit to ages in what is on the table.
You could kick out somebody the day they're born under this ordinance,
Well,
right?
you would go through what, as Arnie said, it's a
Sure.
complaint-driven process. And
Well,
yeah,
you could kick them out on there like within a year or 2, right?
you'd go through the process
Right.
if there were a complaint. It, obviously depends on how long the lease is, things such as
Sure.
that.
But
yes,
eventually-
it would be a violation of the ordinance at some point. If it becomes an issue, we could always come back and try to address, and your idea of not counting somebody between a certain age. My only concern about that is that age will pass, and then so you're 6 months down the line or a year down the line. And again, under the Virginia code, the familial status discrimination is when you're dealing with anyone under 18 and treating them differently, and that would be my concern even about that kind of a breakout. But under this motion that is on the floor, it can be 2 people of any age who live in there, and that's why I don't think it violates the Fair Housing Act, because you can have the mother and daughter, the grandparent, the grandchild, or also nephew, or whatever it may be.
But only 2
Just 2
people. Yeah.
At the marathon work session that we had, I felt consensus within council, myself included, to propose, draft, and put forward something that is on the conservative side so we can understand the better workings of how we move forward. And I think this is a more than acceptable way to do that. You could even substitute auxiliary dwelling unit from where I sit to give that property owner an opportunity. I think that was discussed in the work session, to explore different avenues of income so that they can stay in their house or.
But that only applies to single individuals or couples. It does not apply to a family of, say, 3.
I'm trying to support the idea. Let's try this as an auxiliary or accessory dwelling unit option for property owners in our community to explore different options of how they want to have their property be successful.
So this
If
would
you're-
be considered a start. Apply the principles of this, and put it in practice to see if it fits what we're really trying to achieve. And they would come back and tweak it when it doesn't fit.
Well, clearly, we don't know what the application of accessory dwelling units will be by landowners. And would encourage council to not let perfection stand in the way of progress. And with that, that's for roll call vote.
Wait, can I make one more comment? I know we feel like we've worked on this a long time, but I can tell you that Arnie and Kate have worked on this for well over a year, and I mean, really worked on it, as has Planning Commission. And I don't know if, I guess Gladys is not back there still, but so I just want to give my thanks to Arnie and Kate and Planning Commission They put in a lot of time and a lot of research, and I appreciate all the work that everyone's done on this.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
No.
Ms. Strong,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
You already called him.
I'm sorry. Mr. Betts,
No.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
And a motion carries, I think, 4-2. Thank you all very much. Say again, a lot of robust discussion and a lot of work that's gone into this. And the main objective, I believe, is realized with working to provide additional housing within our city. Much like when we were looking at Spotswood and Waddell Street, not everybody agreed on exact use of that property or the project that we've embarked upon. But I know that council's worked hard and very thoughtfully working to do what they feel is best for our community. Next item, 10.2, review of draft policy on government speech from city-owned light posts. And I'll call on the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is before you just for any continued review, not necessarily action that you would want to take. In the past, my understanding from city council is you just sort of want to put this on hold. So it is on hold. If there's any reason to bring it up any further, opportunity tonight to discuss it, or we can continue to just hold it.
Can we make a motion if we would like to discontinue staff's work on the flag ordinance? Is that possible?
I believe you could make any motion you'd like to deny or just hold it indefinitely.
Yeah, so you could make a motion to table, for example.
And if we table it, staff would discontinue work on.
Tabling it sets it aside indefinitely, so and you could also postpone it to a certain period of time, but tabling would be an indefinite.
Yeah, I'd make that motion to table the flag ordinance indefinitely.
I'll second it.
Have a motion, a second.
Were there parts of it that needed cleaning up? I thought that's actually how we came down this path, was that
I don't know that there were parts that needed, there, at one point there was, but I think the most recent version, I don't recall any edits, but I'm happy to go back and.
No. I mean, if we table this, I thought the whole reason we went down this issue is we needed to clean up the overall policy so that we were clear that city council had the control over speech on flag poles and posts and everything.
Well, my understanding is that we've already closed the public forum, so this.
That's correct. And if I can comment on the litigation back then, the court ruled that we had closed the forum. And so there was no public access to the forum being the light posts. The modification of the zoning ordinance several years ago may have changed the code section concerning flags. You'll recall that discussion, but we have never reopened the forum. And if, as long as we take no affirmative action to reopen the forum, an action of this body, the forum will not be opened. And so I don't think there's anything you have to clean up.
Okay, because I wasn't even.
A long legal answer to
Yeah,
your.
I wasn't
to your
even
question.
referring to flags.
Oh, okay.
I was referring to wayfinding.
Oh.
I mean, I thought that was the whole reason we started down this path was to clean up the wayfinding, and I would like to do that. I'd like to have the opportunity to do wayfinding if we.
I just don't think any of this is a good use of city resources. We've heard from numerous people.
I thought it was tourism that asked us to.
Yes, and
I believe it was Main Street.
But in the
Lexington.
past.
Tourism's working with them.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't think this is I just want to say real quick, I don't think this is a good use of taxpayer resources. We've heard from numerous citizens who are opposed to this. I don't want to use taxpayer dollars to be putting up these flags and to, potential legal battles. This is not a good use of city resources in my view. That's why I've made the motion.
I think Leslie was speaking about trying to help tourism in Main Street, Lexington. Her question was about why we brought this up in the first place. I think you're taking it as flags.
I'm talking about tabling the whole ordinance, so just leaving things to where they are so that we don't use taxpayer resources on
behalf of the tourism request.
And I don't think you're listening though, but so the issue was, we did need to address.
So, and I apologize, I misunderstood your question since we were talking about flags primarily. I was focused on that. The concern with the flag, the pole, the light posts, flags, or whatever else goes on them, is that the only thing that can be put on them are things the city, through city council, chooses to put on them. That was the purpose of the policy. We are not opening a forum. So to the extent any private entity, whether it's a tourism related entity or whether it's a college or whatever, wanted to put something on those flag posts, we cannot allow that or we open the forum. If city council wants to exercise its right over its property, then it needs to adopt a policy, whether that's a flag, whether that's some kind of a sign. Now, obviously not all signs, traffic signs don't have to be addressed in a policy, but we are trying to be clear about these particular light posts and what the government speech will be is from those light posts because of their history, right?
Right. And so, and that's why I would like to keep going with this. I'm fine if we keep the flags as is. I would actually like to see be able to put our high school flag up there and our local school flags. Not, that doesn't mean VMI and WNL, but at least the public school. But I'd like to clean up this other piece as well.
Well, are we under discussion at this point? Because my understanding is there's a motion and a second.
We're somewhat free falling. The city manager would like to speak, and unless there's an objection from council, I'll call on the city manager. Is there an objection?
To Ms. Strawn's point, the original request was from both Main Street, Lexington, and tourism. And tourism is a branch of the city government. It is a local government entity, which we share, of course, with Rockbridge County and Buena Vista. So it is a governmental function. So from the standpoint of wayfinding, whether it's for signage for a particular attraction or for helping tourists and visitors find their way through downtown, you know, I see that as a government function coming through tourism. But
and I don't disagree with that, but I want the speech to be determined by this body, and we articulate what speech we want from the light posts. Nobody else gets a say. It's up to city council because it's good.
We do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
So I just want to clarify. I mean, you're saying indefinitely. I mean, we have work to do. I mean, there are signage. I thought we identified that there are signs that say carriage rides this way. I thought we had some work to do.
So the question is, do we change from our existing policy to the policy that has been worked on? Or do we just leave things in place as they are and change nothing? And
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, if I may, is maybe a consensus to a table consideration. Well, I guess this is not consistent with what you said, Leslie, but table consideration of flags and look into wayfinding. But I don't know if there's a consensus for that.
I don't know that we've gotten that specific, and your observation I share as well. I perceive, Mr. Betts, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but the city's stance of allowing 3 flags, you're set and would like to affirm and not make any changes to
the 3 flag policy.
I think what other council members are suggesting is relative to potential QR codes, signage for carriage rides, farmers markets, other wayfinding is what would like to have greater clarification on. And so for that reason, I think your peers would like to see it not be tabled, but continue to work on it. And if it's the will of council to, the flags are part of that overarching, I understand, I perceive your position to be very focused on the flags and it's staying where it is.
My position extends to the QR codes. I just do not, I think that this whole thing is just not a good use of resources. That is my opinion. I don't know if Council Member Alexander shared that opinion to clarify that. Just to understand where she's at, because she made the second.
Yeah, my position is that, first of all, tourism presented wayfinding signage to us years ago and did some pricing, pretty expensive, did some coordination of signage between Rockbridge County, Lexington, and Buena Vista, all of that. And nothing really ever came of it, I think because of the cost. I would like to go back and look at other creative ways to be able to have that wayfinding signage, and we need to have it. And we need to continue the conversation about wayfinding. I just don't think that putting that QR code on the flagpole is going to be something that will be the solution. I think it's going to open up more issues than what the city wants to go through again. The conversations, the dissension, the costs legally, all of that. I don't want to see the city go through that again. And people are going to be nitpicking whatever we put down in an ordinance, to be able to find those ways that anybody will be able to put something on that flagpole. And we would have to go through that litigation process again when we start saying no to this and yes to somebody else. MSL owns the flower pots. Are there some creative ways that there can be QR codes put on the flower pots? I just think that we need to start thinking outside of the box rather than just the obvious. What that solution looks like, I don't know, but it will take conversation. And we spent a lot of time working on the ADUs, came up with the solution. And I think that if we go back to the drawing board and look at other solutions to wayfinding other than that ordinance in regard to the flagpoles being right to the surface again, we can make something else happen. I just think we're opening up something that we are not prepared for.
I would echo everything Councilmember Alexander said.
Mr. Smith.
I would ask the city attorney a question: if government speech on flagpoles, be it flags, be it QR codes, be it whatever message that the city wants to put forward, could you use a similar argument for or against what the state does with license plates? The state establishes what is appropriate on a license plate that is government owned and government communicated, whatever message that the community or supporters of whatever message is put on that plate is appropriate or isn't appropriate. If there's enough support to put forward that message through the state on the license plate, can you use that similar argument in this case as to the legal standing of city putting forward a message on a flagpole?
Sure.
Because as we know, the state has decided what it's not and what is appropriate for messaging, symbols, words, what the person wants to put as a message, personal message on their license plate.
And one of the issues in those cases, and there have been a lot of license plate cases over the years, is the ability to come and make the ask. If somebody can make the ask by getting enough signatures, then they get the license plate. That's opening a forum. That's not really government speech, even though that's the argument. Even though the government issues the license plate, the countervailing argument is the government issues the license plate. We decide what goes on it.
Right.
You come and ask, but we can say yes and say no. When you parlay that over to the flagpoles, again, the policy doesn't have a mechanism for people to ask, and that is by design because we're not entertaining public speech. It is what city council wants to speak from there. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but they are similar in that respect. And again, there've been license plate cases in this circuit and in other circuits.
So that was my follow-up was how much litigation has the state been subjected to as a result of?
There was litigation kind of you may recall I mentioned once upon a time that there've been some development in the government speech doctrine over the last decade or so. There were some cases 10 years ago. There were quite a few of them. I think they've died down because there's been some guidance in that area. And similarly, the Boston case I mentioned to you with regard to flags provides some guidance as to policies that a locality can adopt for flagpoles. And so that's what we used in trying to model this resolution, was some guidance from courts as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for government speech, and how to establish what the governing body's preferred speech is.
Thank you. And ultimately with that proposed policy, as is and going forward is always subject to city council, a vote of city council's approval or not.
Certainly, it can always be changed. And again, the one thing you guard against, whether it's flags or QR codes or some other wayfinding, is it has to be the articulated speech of this body and not opening a forum. And I think candidly, that's what Nick is concerned about, is when do you cross the line and open a forum? And that's, you don't have a mechanism that allows the
And
public to
I
come
have
and
the
request.
utmost faith in your capabilities to defend us if we get sued, but that's, use of your time on something else you could be working on for the city. And that's, and additionally, as was mentioned, people are gonna have to go put these flags up, take them down. To be safe, we'll probably have to own them and buy new ones from time to time. This is just not a good use of city funds in my opinion. And we should discontinue the flagpole policy and maybe come up with some other creative ideas, as Councilmember Alexander pointed out.
But we have a motion to table it indefinitely. So if you don't want to talk about creative ways,
I don't want to talk about the flagpoles. I don't want to do anything with the flagpoles, related to the flagpoles, anything related to flagpoles. If staff wants to come up with flower pots or some other way to promote this, I am perfectly fine with that. But I do not want to put QR codes or other flags or do anything differently than we're currently doing, because I don't want to use city resources on that.
very good. And we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion of new material? Again, the motion is to table the review of draft policy of government speech on city-owned light post indefinitely. And with roll call vote, Mr. Betts.
I vote aye.
Beg your pardon?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Smith,
No, I'd like to continue the discussion.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strong,
Nay.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
We come up with 4-2 to table indefinitely. Very good. Appreciate staff's efforts to bring that forward, and moving on with the agenda, boards and commissions, Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
Blue Ridge Resource Authority met on Monday. The highlights were working on the capital improvement budget and the regular operating budget.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Main Street, Lexington, Mr. Smith.
No report.
Planning Commission, Ms. Strong.
Planning Commission met last Thursday and we continued our work on our annual zoning ordinance amendment updates. That's all I have. We finished sorting through batch A and batch B. Batch A are ones that we were able to take care of right then. And so pretty soon Arnie will present a package of pretty simple zoning ordinance amendment. Batch B are ones that we feel like we need to spend a little more time on. And so we'll take care of that throughout the year.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to staff. Regional Tourism, Mr. Betts.
No reports, sir, other than to say, the USA BMX event was a great event. My understanding is there was as many as 6,000 to 7,000 people in attendance for that event. I understand the numbers are still being counted. Great event for our area. Great cooperation between the three localities, and look forward to hopefully having them back here next year.
Yes, I hope the support we showed on Friday will keep them coming back and extending that lease or contract for future endeavors. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
The Railroad Board of Directors met, I guess it was last week. We approved our budget. Hopefully it was sent to Jen. It's just contingent on putting in the personnel expenses like health insurance, et cetera, once that's finalized. But we passed our budgets.
Very good. And remind me, I don't know what's prickling in my brain, but RARO is we're the fiscal agent, so the health insurance pieces would match up with the cities.
Right. We're the fiscal agent. We don't collect anything for serving as fiscal agent, but we passed a policy, our RARO board passed a policy that we would follow the lead of the city of Lexington. As we all know, we don't have to. As a board, we could do other things, but we passed a policy that we would continue to follow Lexington's lead on health insurance and staff compensation.
Right. Very good. Thank you. Threshold, Miss Alexander.
No report.
Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Short report, the Maury Service Authority is scheduled to meet in 2 weeks, and we're going to change the meeting date, meeting place to the water plant conference room instead of here. And what we expect to be the major item on the agenda coming up is the report from Davenport detailing how the financing is going to work for the next 5 years.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Alligood? For my report, just congratulations to Washington Lee and the student-run mock convention. I think the parade was a great success. For those of you who didn't get to see it, it was creative and well done and moved well. And also the Core Center's success with the BMX. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe all of you have in front of you a picture of the newest historical marker that we will be receiving soon, and that's the Green Book Historical Marker that references the Green Book for Black tourists, travelers that was put out between 1936 and 1966 to assure them they'd have places to stop that would accommodate them when in many cases there weren't none or not easily found. In Lexington, several businesses were listed on that tourism guide over the years: Franklin Tourist Home, Rose Inn, Washington Cafe, and the J.M. Wood Tourist Home. And I just mentioned that for the people who don't have the picture in front of them, but we will be putting this marker up soon pending agreement from the owner of the land where the tourist center is. We've identified a site there. We're having a conversation with that owner to do that. Update from the police department. Command staff is meeting and reviewing the assignments for some of our task force units, like the Regional Drug Task Force, the SWAT unit, Mounted unit, and also possible promotions in the future. So that, again, command structure, the LPD is taking on that assignment as we speak. Chief Green and Sheriff Funkhauser met with WNL President Dudley, VMI Superintendent Wins, and VMI Police Chief Marshall to discuss partnerships between the local law enforcement agencies and the local schools in our community. LPD and LFD, as mentioned by the mayor, provided traffic control, security, and standby during the highly successful MockCon event. Special speed enforcement activities, including use of the speed trailer, has occurred on McCorkle Street and will continue to occur. Officers provided 36 hours of foot patrol in the last week. In the fire department, the department is conducting 2 days of CPR training for Heritage Hall's skilled nursing and support staff. Staff conducted 2 days of CPR training for skilled nursing and support staff at, for training for a homeschool co-op, public education event for Yellow Brick Road Early Learning Center, installed a child safety seat, all to proactively keep our citizens safe in the community. LFD staff have begun work in a committee to explore the specifications desired for engine 92 replacement. This work will prepare us for the replacement of the engine and further review prior to the scheduled replacement in FY26. Wow. LFD responded to an incident in the Kroger parking lot when a vehicle drove into a retaining wall. There were no injuries. In a similar vein, there was an incident when a full-size SUV hit the post office. The vehicle airbags deployed and the driver was transported to the hospital with minor injuries. Staff contained and removed fluid from the vehicles, and the building had only minor cosmetic damage. As noted in the News Gazette, This past Wednesday, the school board and superintendent have been discussing a school budget with a requested 10% increase in city funding. The school superintendent, Rebecca Walters, and I have met with our finance directors to discuss the needs presented from the schools. As part of that discussion, we shared the general limits that are needed to balance the city budget. Based on the requirements for a balanced budget, we shared with Superintendent Walters that possible cuts to the budget being discussed by the school board must be considered to present a balanced budget to city council. Just today, we had a vehicle accident involving one of our public works staff. An oncoming vehicle sideswiped our city truck. Our drivers in our truck seemed to be uninjured, but he was taken to the hospital for evaluation. The seatbelt, if nothing else, as it went off, did cause some bruising and pain. So he was checked. As far as I know, the other driver was not injured, and that driver was issued a ticket. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the city manager?
Where did the public works accident occur?
On McCorkle Street, outside of the city, near
Taco Bell,
yeah, Taco Bell. Thank you.
in that curve. Ms. Alexander.
If you could clarify the Green Book sign, and the last I had heard, the signage was going to be placed where tourism is.
Yes.
Or is it going to be someplace else now? Is that
Oh, no,
still
no,
going to be?
tourism. Yeah.
Okay.
On Washington Street.
Correct.
Any other questions? City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things I've been working on, obviously, doing some work on the ADU ordinance and researching the state and federal housing act and addressing issues on that. I think I mentioned last meeting, 2 contracts that Jim and I were working to finalize. One was a payment contract. It's a mechanism that allows citizens to pay taxes electronically. We have finalized that contract now. There was a limitation of liability language we kind of went back and forth about, but we've got that resolved, and I believe Jim has signed that and sent that in. And then the Thompson and Litton contract for the DSS building design. There was some back and forth about some of the terms and conditions with regard to the schedule and additional compensation and circumstances under which additional compensation would be appropriate. We've now worked through that, and I think Jim signed that yesterday and sent that in. So that both of those contracts are behind us. Also fielded some questions from the mayor about opioids. Another manufacturer known as Endo has declared bankruptcy. That will be covered by city council's relationship with Coughlin and Knowles, the firm that's handling the other opioid cases. There will be a new flow of money coming from the CVS and Walgreens. That's a little bit unrelated to what the mayor asked, but that should be, those settlements have been approved and those funds should begin to flow. I'm not sure what Lexington's take is from those settlement funds, but those should begin to flow next quarter, we think. So with that, that's most of what I've been working on the last couple of weeks. To answer your question, Mr. Alligood, I see you thinking it. The payment contract is a user fee, so it doesn't cost the city anything. So, all right. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Members of council have any questions? Hearing none. Next item is, we already had our new business. We're moving into closed session. And before we enter, just want to affirm that don't plan on taking any action when we come out of closed session. And with that, I'll ask Ms. Alexander to read us in.
Move that the city council of the city of Lexington convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 for the purpose of discussing and considering the disposition of publicly held real property at 626 Waddell Street, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy, and Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29 for the purpose of discussing and considering the award of an amended public contract with Urban Core Realty LLC and Echelon Resources Incorporated pertaining to 626 Waddell Street, where the contract amendment will involve the expenditure of public funds, and discussion in an open session would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
Just a question to clarify, is this for Waddell Street and Spotswood, or just, I thought it was actually Spotswood. It's the wrong address.
Yeah, I thought I have been informed Waddell or heard Waddell, so
Yeah.
I would ask that the motion identify the Spotswood and Waddell properties.
Okay,
You don't need to reread it.
Okay.
Just make that clarification.
okay,
And with that clarification, I'll second it.
okay. At 626 Waddell Street, we strike that and include Spotswood. only.
626 Waddell at
Add,
Spotswood.
add Spotswood?
Yeah.
All right. And Leslie, you second it? Thank you. Roll call vote, Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Sigler,
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you.
We'll take,